Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode 147. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my handsome Los Angeles son, Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you today?
Hello. It is I. My allergies are killing me no matter which side of the country I'm on. So that's really lovely.
Well, it's interesting because you were out east during like the pollination. I mean, dude, I took my blower out the other day and just like blew the driveway and shit. And it was just like, like, you know, like something out of like Scarecrow blows out of his hand or something like that.
It's bad.
And,
it's not. Yeah. I don't know what the hell is going on, but I think the world's trying to kill me.
It's like The Happening. Did you ever see that movie?
Yeah.
About like the weird pollen. I saw that in the theater with some girl I was dating briefly. That was the worst. That movie sucked. Just throwing that out there.
It's not a good date movie.
No. Dustin Furman, executive producer of Last Day Media. How are you?
I'm doing well. You know, it's a new week. I told you I went on a little vacation. And actually, I have a quick shout out I got to do right off the top. This is very exciting.
Yeah.
A member of the audience a few weeks ago reached out to me when they heard I was looking for a blue Vita from Japan. And so they hooked me up. Nice. New member of the family here.
Japan.
And,
so did you did you pay for it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Of course. Yeah. People call, I'm sure, as you know, people offer to send us stuff. I don't think I've ever said yes to anything, but yeah, I paid for it. He shipped it and I paid for the shipping and stuff like that. So, cool, it was a great deal. Was used, but it was used by, I'm assuming a very clean Japanese man who took very good care. But dude, he went out. Okay. A couple other items. Japanese Danganronpa V3.
Nice.
And these two Persona games that were only released in Japan physically.
The dancing games?
Yeah. So
cool.
Thank you, Pete. Shout out to Pete for helping me out.
The Japanese man, Pete.
Yes. No, he's
Pete-san.
I think he's I don't know much about this mysterious Pete. Yeah. But I believe he's an American living there. Cool. So his English is very good.
Well, it's very nice of him. And thank you all out there for your kindness, your love and support of us. We appreciate that. And thank you for supporting us on this show, of course. And welcome to another episode of Sacred Symbols. Now, I have to tell you guys something. Every so often, and I think Chris will be able to relate to this because, I don't want to... I take antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds, right? Every so often, I take them at night before I go to bed. Every blue moon, I forget to take them. And then I wake up, and then I don't know if I had forgotten to take them. And so you kind of just got to ride it out for the day until you get to the next, because you don't want to like double up. So anything could happen today.
Just double up.
Because I didn't... Yeah, whatever. I'm a little afraid of doing it. I don't know what's going to happen.
Dude, people take like 40 of these things, you know, like, and they're just like doing stand up, and then they croak at 50. But like, I mean,
true enough.
You know, you're fine.
True enough. So I'm riding by the seat of my pants today, but it's good to be here with you boys, and it's good to be here with the audience. It's a really big week actually this week.
Yeah,
a lot of news to get through. Sacred Symbols, of course, is our weekly PlayStation podcast. You can support it on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia, where more than 10,000 of you do. We are at an all-time high on Patreon, and we really appreciate it. Appreciate that. We remain the most supported games-related Patreon in the world.
Hell yeah.
So thank you so much. Of course, your support can get your name in the credits. You can submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to the show, get early ad-free access to every episode of the show, etc., and so on. I do want to say at the lowest tier, though, we have our weekly Sacred Symbols Plus episode, which is our supplemental podcast. And last week I had Eric Kane on, the writer from Forbes. And we talked a lot about, he's a kind of a further left person in the games industry, but very anti-woke like I am. And so we had an interesting conversation about a few things, and you can go check that out. I think this coming week, and I'll talk about the game more when we get to the games we're playing, but I think Matt and I might, so Mr. Matty Plays, of course, who does Defining Duke, our Xbox podcast, I think we might sit down and do a spoiler cast for Outriders. You boys are allowed on the show if you want, but I don't know if you're prepared because you're not an Outriders fan. like Maddie and I are. Big fan of that game, and I'm gonna save it for now. Just a few quick other things to get through. Merch, laststandmedia.shop. We did start. All right, so this is kind of jumping around, but we started. I don't know what we're gonna do with this yet, because I don't want to ruin the news. I think everyone already knows.
Yeah.
Sony reversed their Vita and PS3 thing. We'll talk about that in a little while. But we started a merch line called Vita Means Death to kind of celebrate the end of Vita. I think we're gonna continue to sell those shirts. I've already contracted new art. I think we're gonna keep doing it for one reason, which is that I still don't think they're gonna let any more games on. So I think they're just leaving the stores open. So we'll talk more about that. But the Vita Means Death line is doing very well, and we appreciate your support over there. The other big announcement that we have, though, has to do with another social media network, as it were, that we're going to join soon. And Jordan wrote in about this. Actually, ironically, he says, fellas, when will there be a Last Stand Media subreddit? Surely there are a couple of beautiful, kind, thoughtful people in this community that would be willing to moderate it. What gives? Dustin, take it away.
Yeah, so as of today, we're going to launch on Friday, and comes out on Friday. We have the Last Stand Media subreddit, which is reddit.com/r/laststandmedia. And so, sort of like the Discord, we're doing a little bit of a soft launch, so to say, in that users will not initially be able to post like full posts, but our lovely moderators are going to be posting threads for all the content that we do, minus the Patreon exclusive stuff, because that just gets into a hairy situation there. So you can join in, interact with other people, talk about the content. This is open to all. So whether you're on the Patreon or not, you'll be able to join in. The posts initially will be the links to the Patreon exclusive stuff, but they will be updated when they go public. So this is the beginning, as we do. And as I said, we've done in the past, we want to make sure we do things correctly in all good order. So expect the subreddit to expand as we go along.
Yeah, so that's at r/laststandmedia.
Yes.
And so please look forward to that. We're excited about it now. Of course, one of the other perks on Patreon, amongst the many perks, is access to our Discord. That's for the hardcore audience if you want to be over there. But yeah, like Dustin said, this will be for everybody. Now, it's important. There's something important for me to note here, because Reddit has a pretty bad reputation. I mean, let's be honest, it has a horrible reputation, actually. If you go to like Reddits for almost anyone that you like, it's usually people just bitching about everything. That is true for Colin's Last Stand, my old company, as well. We've kind of just abandoned that subreddit because it's just so negative and so toxic. But I do want to be really clear. If you're not cool on the new subreddit, if you're not nice to other people, we'll just ban you. I really don't care. Dustin, please.
I was going to say, rule number 1 of our Discord and our subreddit is don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
And the admins, which are myself and Ben, or the moderators, which whether it's in Discord or on the subreddit, have the final authority on that. So if you're an asshole, you're done.
You're getting out. And I will say this too. I don't poke in there very much anymore, but if you're one of like the 5 or 10 people on the old subreddit for Colin's Last Stand that was always mean and was always an asshole, you're gonna have a real hard time posting on the new one. Sucks for you. Sucks for you, doesn't it? Oh well. Oh man. Moving on. A couple corrections we need to get to before we get into what we're playing and all the rest. 2 important corrections, boys. Brandon Breland wrote in, said, Colin, you mentioned how because of the split trophy list for PS4 and PS5 versions of games, you'd have to buy the Final Fantasy VII Remake DLC for PS4. It was to my knowledge that the DLC was PS5 exclusive. Did this change? It didn't. I went and read about this. For some reason, this was written, but I kind of just missed it. It is kind of buried on their website, though. The Yuffie DLC for Final Fantasy VII is only for PlayStation 5, meaning that I won't be playing it, because I can't split those trophy lists up.
Colin, you are fucked.
I know.
This is what I said last time. I'm going to say it again. When your trophy antics get a little too far.
Yeah.
It's too far.
I just don't want, I can't have another list.
Oh my God.
I can't have another list. I'm
so
sorry.
Crazy. Don't you want to play that? Don't you want to play that DLC?
Yes, but I can't. Don't you understand?
Dude, we need like a recovery program for Colin, like a multi-step program.
Yeah. Oh my
I need
God.
I need to be weaned. But the more important thing is that I didn't want to mislead people. You're right. It's not on PS4. I thought for some reason, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to release it for the people that had already played the game, but we don't want to do that. We only want to release the DLC for the new version of the game, so everyone has to go buy it again.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, well.
The other thing that I wanted to say, boys, is about pricing. We got, quite a few British listeners to our show. And we've been talking about game prices, and Ross Wynyard wrote in, amongst many, over the last few weeks and said, "Hello, CCD. Colin, a quick correction. Last episode you referenced, albeit with an upwards inflection, PS5 games in the UK costing £60. They in fact cost £70 or $97, which is a £15 or $21 jump on full price PS4 games. Note that this is inclusive of a 20% sales tax. I guess we had it too good for long with a £55 or $76 set of games inclusive of tax, but the rise is nevertheless more significant at a 27% increase from last gen." Fair enough. The one thing that I want to note though here, and this kind of cuts against the Europeans always bitching about prices, right? And other people around the world, Australia, etc. In the United States, this is very surprising to people, I think, outside of America. And we've talked about this, I think, on the show in the past, maybe, but sales tax in the United States is separate. So when a game is $59.99, it's $59.99 plus tax.
Yeah.
If you're in New Hampshire, you don't pay tax. If you're in like California, you pay like 9.5% tax. It depends on where you are. These prices in Europe include tax because they're VAT countries, value-added tax countries. So you're not paying quite as much as you're making it seem. Nonetheless, did want to make that correction. Thank you, British listeners. Quick reminder, Play at Home continues. Horizon Zero Dawn is free for all right now until May 15th. You don't have to be a PlayStation Plus subscriber. Don't be a fucking idiot. Go download the game. They do say on the PlayStation blog more games are coming. So we have the 11 with Ratchet and Clank. So Horizon plus those other 9 games, 5 first party and second party, 5 third party, right? Wasn't that whatever they're doing? So you can go check those out if you want. I actually happen to own all of them. So that sucks for me.
Yeah.
And Square Enix, we talked about last week at length about buyouts. They will be at E3 and they have denied all buyout rumors. So that's worth noting as well. Returnal comes out April 30th. Outlets are starting to post their previews. I am not reading any of them. I am not looking at any videos. I am not doing anything. We will not be talking about that game on this show until episode 149. Something like that. This is 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 149. So I'm sorry, but we won't be spoiling that here. We don't get early access to games. And finally, I really wanted to pick your guys' brain about this because you're much more technical than I am. The word came out, I guess, from ResidentEvil.com. Push Square had passed this along to us. So Resident Evil Village, which comes out soon, we're really excited about it. This weird demo thing's going on right now or whatever, but besides that, will run at 60 frames 4K on PlayStation 5 with ray tracing disabled, but the game will run at, let's see here, 900p 45 frames on PS4 base. Chris, what do you think about that? I thought that was weird just because isn't that an unsettling sort of frame rate people are going to notice is off? Wouldn't you rather just have 30 or 60?
Yeah, it seems like a bit of a bizarre place to really lock yourself. 45 is not. It reminds me of when The Hobbit was coming out and it was like at 48 frames or whatever, and everybody was like, "This feels wrong. Everything about this feels bizarre and strange." 900p, isn't that what Rise: Son of Rome ran at
yes.
on Xbox One when it first came out?
Yes.
That's kind of a. I mean, I guess it makes sense. These are old machines. I don't expect Resident Evil Village to run at even 1080. But I don't like that frame rate. I think that's just bizarre. I would rather have just a really consistent 30 that never wavers than 45, which seems a bit high for 900p on like a 2021 game, you know? Like I don't believe that that's going to be a stable 45. The way that they seem to be making it anyway. I don't like it.
I thought it was weird. I mean, Dustin, it's worth noting that on PS4 Pro, the game will run at 1080p 60 or 4K 30. So this is only for PS4 base. I guess, Dustin, though, the good news is that my fears might be misfounded or unfounded based on certain games. It seems like they're scaling back. So Village is not being... It seems like Village actually was deconstructed for release on PS4 and almost maybe wasn't intended to be. Although that's just a theory. What do you think?
Yeah, the 45 FPS thing is odd because the way I understand TVs is that they run on like 30, 60 refresh rate. So when you have something in between, you have an odd number of frames per second, and that's what causes like judder and stuff like that. So theoretically, if you have a TV with VRR, which is the variable refresh rate, that would take care of that. But not very many people have that. So the fact that they chose not to go just a straight 30 is a little weird. But what this tells me overall about the game, from what we've seen from trailers and how that they took the next gen or current gen and then went to last gen, is that my guess is that what's really killing the frame rate is the more open areas of this game. We've seen the outdoors and the castle. So the image that Capcom put out says output resolution and expected frame rate. So I would hope that it's like 45 FPS is the lowest resolution that you get when you're outdoors. But usually they post these as a best case scenario, not the worst case.
Yeah.
Indeed. We'll see. I'm excited. I mean, that game's creeping up, pardon the pun, but I'm really stoked to play it.
Have you played any of the demos?
I've not. Have you?
No. I didn't. The fact that it was timed just sapped all my, like, I don't want to be playing a game and then have it ripped away from me like that, you know? I'd rather just wait for the damn game.
It is weird. I don't really understand the point of that. I mean, other than to drive people to the PlayStation Network, but why wouldn't you want to just drive them there at any time? I mean, if you just keep it up in perpetuity, what is the difference? I was a little confused by that too. Dustin, did you play it?
No, I didn't. I'm just going to wait. You know, I'm ready to go. I'm sold. So.
Oh, yeah. I'm totally on blackout for that game as well. Mm-hmm. All right, boys, let's talk about what we're playing. But before we do, I want to talk about something controversial because I was trying to kind of figure out a way to sneak this in. This isn't really news, but it's something a lot of people are talking about. I'll let Andrew Walsh, who wrote into us on Patreon, take it away, although a lot of other people wrote in about this as well. He says, hello, gentlemen. So I got to ask, is it me or are the people behind Days Gone acting a little unprofessional this week? You have Jeff Ross, who's the game's director, sharing a petition to get Days Gone 2 greenlit, and John Garvin, who was one of the co-founders of Ben, no longer there, saying, quote, if you love a game and want a sequel, you should buy it at full fucking price, end quote. I'm currently playing Days Gone. I'm a little over 25 hours in, and I gotta say, I love this game, but just because Sony didn't give them the go-ahead this time around to make a sequel, does that mean the franchise is dead forever? Why doesn't Ben have the mindset of let's make a fucking killer game and then try and pitch Days Gone 2 again? Because honestly, the idea they had of a shared universe game with co-op doesn't even sound that fun. I agree with that. We'll talk about all of that. So what do you guys think? I get these guys are proud of what they accomplished with Days Gone, and it definitely does seem like they have a chip on their shoulder from being dicked around by Sony for the last year and a half. Hope all is well. Appreciate the countless hours of content you guys bang out each and every week. So for the uninitiated boys, and this is from videogameschronicle.com. Although this comes from an interview that was conducted with John Garvin by our friend David Jaffe, who will be on the show in the coming weeks. We got to work that out still, but he and I are in contact. So, by the way, Video Games Chronicle, one of the few, what I would consider very useful video game websites right now. So John Garvin appeared on this Gaffey's kind of show, and he talked about, and I really want to, I've been so excited to talk to you guys about this. Here's what he says in part. He says, quote, I do have an opinion on something that your audience may find of interest, and it might piss some of them off. If you love a game, buy it at full fucking price. I can't tell you how many times I've seen gamers say, yeah, I got that on sale. I got it through PS Plus, whatever. But then David Jaffe asks, but how do you know you love a game until you've played it? And then Garvin answers, quote, I'm just saying you don't, but don't complain if a game doesn't get a sequel if it wasn't supported at launch. It's like God of War got whatever number millions of sales at launch, and you know Days Gone didn't. I'm just speaking for me personally as a developer. I don't work for Sony. I don't know what the numbers are. I can tell you that when we were doing Siphon Filter Dark Mirror on PSP, we got so fucked on Dark Mirror because piracy was a thing and Sony wasn't really caught up on what piracy was doing to sales. And we would show them torrents. A torrent site had like 200,000 copies of Dark Mirror being downloaded, if I remember it right. The numbers could be wrong, but regardless, I was pissed about it then. I was like, this is money out of my pocket. So I think the uptick in engagement with the game is not as important as did you buy the game at full price? Because if you did, then that's supporting the developers directly. End quote. This is a deep one. I've thought a lot about this. I like John Garvin. I know him personally. Really smart dude. So I'm not trying to go easy on him. Before I even introduce what I have to say, though, Chris, what do you think about these controversial comments?
Well, it's. I feel like it's a little bit multifaceted. Yeah, obviously, if you want to support a game, buying it at full fucking price is the best way to support it. But I find it interesting that, like, when asked, like, yeah, well, how do you know you love a game if you haven't played it? He just goes,
Right.
You don't. So it's just like a complete. So it's almost like the discussion's over.
Right.
At that point, there's nowhere to go from that, because you just admitted that it's ridiculous to assume that. But yeah, I don't think I don't know. Like, my opinion on this is, like, I feel like they're being a little bit unprofessional, but at the same time, like, given the stories that they're telling, and given the way that they have been dicked around by Sony for the last year and a half, I don't necessarily not expect that attitude, from the developers, especially now after being stuck on some Uncharted game that they never wanted to do. It makes the attitude I sympathize with and I understand, but at the same time, the premise of you should clairvoyantly understand that you're going to love a game, so before you play it, so you can support it before you want to, is just, I don't know. That's just a bizarre thing for an industry veteran to say.
Yeah, he's been at Ben. Well, Garvin. So this is an important part of this. Ben's studio, as a lot of people probably know, is founded as a studio called Idedic, in Oregon, and they were the ones that made Siphon Filter. And so Sony didn't buy them until later on. But I feel like there's an important piece that's missing here, which is that I just feel like what he's trying to say makes a lot of sense, but I just don't think he nailed it quite right.
It's not worded well, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Hold on a second. Dustin's back. What was that? Where did you go?
I locked my wife out of the house. It's embarrassing. I'm sorry. She was waiting out on the porch and it's cold outside.
Yeah, no, that's fine. She can't wait there for 2.5 hours. We have things to do. So I appreciate you. I was just curious where you went.
I'm sorry.
So it's okay. Dustin, I want to throw this one to you though. I want to line this up though, so everyone understands, because I think this is probably the most interesting part of this. Both John Garvin and Jeff Ross aren't at Bend anymore. And what I think is interesting is that Bend went from, and still is, a studio that you almost hear nothing from. Even when, John Garvin and Jeff Ross have been there forever. When's the last time you heard of them if you weren't a huge PlayStation fan before Days Gone? They worked on Siphon Filter and Uncharted and Resistance and all this other shit. But it's clear that there's a lot of pent-up rage at that studio. John Garvin clearly left on bad terms. He left, remember, we found out that he left a year ago.
Yeah.
He clearly left after they didn't greenlight Days Gone, and he seems really mad about it. Days Gone 2. Jeff Ross left, and I think he actually announced that he's going to NetherRealm, so he's staying in the industry. But there's a lot of anger at that studio, and they're going from someone, or a studio you don't hear much from, to a studio that seems to be speaking through people they know they can speak through that are out. And I think that's the biggest thing. John Garvin clearly has a lot of connections there still. He founded the studio. Jeff Ross has a lot of connections there as well. So what are you feeling about what he said, Dustin?
So I need to go and I want to listen to the whole interview, because I saw some people defending him that's like, well, in the context, and we brought it up here a little bit. I was talking about piracy and stuff like that, but you got to, that line, pay full fucking price, of course, that's sensational, of course. So maybe he could have worded things a little better, but I can definitely understand the frustration. And if our theory about this game is true, about the fact that, maybe the leadership wasn't happy with how the PR of the review cycle, with how this was handled, which, here's the thing though, Colin, and this is something I wanted to ask you, because I was thinking about this. We had this idea of like, maybe PR sent out codes too early. Do you think that would that have been a PR decision to send out the codes that early, or would have that been a Ben decision?
No, if it's definitely PR. Definitely PR.
For sure?
I'm positive, just because it works differently with different companies. I think you probably know this from you working with Handsome Phantom and others working with PR, but there's different, like, either the dog wags the tail or the tail wags the dog, right? And at Sony, PR has all of the control. Like all of the control. And even people I know, like very, very intimately at some of these studios, will tell you that in 2 seconds. Like they're scared shitless of the PR teams. That's why a lot of them don't don't say anything. That's why I feel like this is so interesting, but it's only interesting if you have that perspective of these guys being quiet for so long. And I think that that's one of the most important parts of this. You know what I wrote down in my notes here, guys? I feel like what Garvin was trying to say was that players can't be in a consequence-free environment, right? Nothing happens outside of a vacuum. He's not saying it eloquently. He's with Jaffe. I know Jaffe personally as well. He gets you riled up, you know. Yeah, I mean, the first time I met David Jaffe, he told me about how he was curious if I had any weed so we can go smoke it in the parking lot at Sony San Diego like 10 years ago. So, and actually it was a little less than 10 years ago because it was during the Twisted Metal development cycle in 2012. So that, you know, he's a funny guy. He gets great shit out of you. He's gregarious, you know, and I love David Jaffe. And so he's going to get the best out of you.
You know,
exactly. And so I feel like, and I would love to follow up with him. I just feel like, because I know he had kind of pushed back on this as well. And I think that takes a lot of courage for Jaffe because he could easily say the same shit too. I mean, he was kind of screwed by Sony. Drawn to Death really was a fiasco. I think that game was actually really cool. It's just that, remember, it was free to play. Then they decided to charge for it. And then it was totally done at that point. So I feel like what Garvin should have said, Chris, is every choice you make as a consumer has a consequence. And it's true with everything. I mean, that's the thing. It's true with everything. And someone wrote in about this. I wish I brought it up, but I didn't, saying that, like, I'm sick of hearing about Sony being in trouble or Nintendo being in trouble. Like, I don't give a fuck. And I'm like, that's totally fair. You know, because, like, I don't care about many companies either. But it doesn't mean that there aren't consequences for your behavior. And I wonder if maybe that's what he should have said instead. Not your behavior, your purchasing behavior. Yeah.
Well, also, and there's a lot of because somebody can have insight into a situation. Somebody can have like a lot of knowledge about like an industry or a particular, you know, event in the industry, like whatever happened with Days Gone and whatever happened with internally at Bend, and not necessarily be the best at communicating those experiences or not communicating that information. I feel like that's kind of what this is, where I don't think he's wrong, you know, but I also just think like this is just a communication issue, really. He didn't say it right.
Yeah, because like you said, Jaffe immediately says to him, like, how do you know? And it's a totally salient question, but I understand what he meant, which is to say, like, don't whittle us down into nothing. Like, if you feel like you're going to like something, you know, or the reviews are good or it looks positive, you're hurting us. And I feel like there's a lot of, it's so complicated because, like, as I own a developer, and it's not anyone's problem if we don't sell any games. We happen to sell games, but it's not anyone's fault. Like, we're not doing the right job. But you can tell that Garvin has a chip on his shoulder because he brought it up. He brought up God of War, and he's confused why everyone bought God of War and why they didn't buy Days Gone. And you know what? Like, I'm kind of confused by that as well. It's not to say God of War wasn't excellent. It was. But he clearly saw the internal numbers and is like, there's a major disconnect here.
I think the issue with the way this story was presented and the way that it's been kind of like spread around is that the nature of it's like the headline of like buy it at full fucking price removed from like, because I haven't listened to it either. I don't know the tone that was used. Like, I don't know anything. I just see the headlines and words are always worse written than said. I think. Or at least like they're more impactful in any direction when they're written and not said. But
well, you can't confuse what the intent was, right?
Exactly. So. But I think it just comes across like, yeah, he's got a chip on his shoulder, but it's like towards the audience. That's what it seems like. I don't know if it is. I doubt it is. But that's how that line comes across. And it's not like, oh, I'm upset with the way Sony handled our game. Oh, I'm upset with the way Sony handled our studio. It comes across as more like, why didn't people who didn't have access to our game buy it on day one? Like, it seems entitled, you know?
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I mean, I just can't. Dustin, I do wonder what you think about the pitch seems to have been that Days Gone 2 is going to be a more shared multiplayer game. I feel like this is frustrating because that's not what I want, but I understand that that's what they felt like they needed to do because there are too many of these games in the first party, and they can't continue to just make these open world games with no differentiating factor between them. They already have a zombie game. I mean, in The Last of Us. So what do you think about the idea of them trying to, you know, to Andrew's point, go back to it later? Because I feel like that's not going to be possible for them. I feel like I feel like Ben was really fought. I had a fight behind the scenes. I got to dig more about this. I know a lot of people at the studio. I should just talk to them. I don't like to bother people and feel like hey, I'm talking in a year. What's going on? I don't like doing that to people, but I just do feel, Dustin, that they've kind of lost their opportunity to do another Days Gone, and it sucks because I kind of feel like they were trying to connect Days Gone to Siphon Filter, and maybe we would have gotten. It seems like they're in the same universe, clearly, and so it would have been cool to kind of get more of that. What do you think about where they stand now?
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever get any more Days Gone, and I think that's just in part in the fact that regardless of your opinion about whether or not Days Gone is a good game or a bad game or a mediocre game, whatever, this game has some stink to it now, right? It has some stink because of the launch and how poor it ran and the Metacritic score. The game could be 100 on Metacritic now, but it doesn't matter because it was a 70 on launch day when everyone was going to that website and clicking that to see whether or not they were going to buy it. Mm-hmm. And so, especially with this new focus, the blockbuster focused Sony, why risk it? Why risk a sequel to a game that scored a 70? Again, it could be 100 now with updates. It doesn't matter because beyond
first impressions,
right?
First impressions.
Exactly. Yeah. Beyond the three of us and beyond our audience, there are millions of PlayStation gamers and just gamers in general that don't listen to this show. They don't go to IGN.com. They just, check out what's new and what's going on. And they maybe heard from their friend about this game running badly or XYZ. So we got to think about the public mindset that's not in the know as we are in our audiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very well said. Very well said. I don't know. I don't know. I just feel like Ben was caught in between a rock and a hard place. And the only situation that's unfortunate for them really is that they were almost compelled back into serfdom and they had to lose people to get out of it. I mean, that's crazy. I really want to know more. Here's my theory. I'm sure Jaffe knows more and I can talk to him about it, but it seems like Garvin left when Days Gone 2 wasn't greenlit. And it seems like he left in an anger. And then Jeff Ross left, I think, after Uncharted was pulled. It probably is likely he might have been the director of that game. I don't know what is going on with that and if that's going to Naughty Dog or that other San Diego studio. There's a lot of confusion. The problem with what we talk about over and over again is that Sony doesn't speak very much, nor should they necessarily about this drama. But because they don't talk very much, we are left to just kind of connect dots with random scant interviews and rumors and all that. So it's fascinating for us, but I feel bad for those guys because they lost 18 months of dev time on whatever they're going to do next. And they had a chance to break out, and I'm still always going to blame Sony PR for that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about what we're playing. Chris, we'll start with you. It seems like you're in Oddworld world.
Yeah. So I was playing Oddworld Soulstorm. I'm getting really into it. I really, really enjoy it. I got to a point that I got stuck at, though, so I put it down for a little bit, and I just started working on other stuff. And I came across this interview with Lauren Lanning from Ars Technica from I think a year ago, and I had seen it already. I had watched it before, but I was like, I'll put it on in the background or whatever while I work. And I forgot how interesting this dude was and how interesting Oddworld was. Because he talks about Oddworld in a way that George R.R. Martin would talk about his, I feel like he's thought a lot about it. And it occurred to me that I'd been playing these games for so long and I never thought to really look into the lore of it or the backstory of it, which clearly exists. So I've just been going down this rabbit hole of just reading up on the world. And I just found it so interesting. And I remembered that I had bought Stranger's Wrath on Switch, out of just sheer support. I had never played it. I just like Oddworld, and I was like, I should play this thing. And I decided to jump into it, and I really like it too. Oddworld is so just bizarre, and just the tone of it is so unique and so interesting, and I find the story is just genuinely really compelling. So I'm in a very deep Oddworld mode right now, and I'm just happy that it's still around and still kicking, and just makes me happy. But I don't know if I have anything new to say about Soulstorm. I still really like it. I did get to a point with there's an annoying part that I got to where a bunch hundreds of Mudokons are climbing this this spire and you have to protect him, and it becomes kind of like a little bit more action oriented than I think the game's controls allow it for. But I can't get over how good these cutscenes look. And I don't know. I really like Oddworld, and it's really good.
I'm interested in how it's doing.
Yeah, I'm curious.
We're never really going to know. We're never going to know. I mean, it's totally been torpedoed by PlayStation Plus, so the sales numbers are going to be gimped anyway.
Yeah.
But I love Lorne Landing too. I'm happy that people seem to be enjoying Soulstorm, and that's great. But I wonder how much money they got for PlayStation Plus. We'll never know that either.
Yeah.
Dustin says here you're playing Resident Evil 7. You're preparing.
Yes, I am preparing. I decided on a whim to start this as my new stream game. And man, this game is good. This game, like, they talk about the first hour, which is like the pitch, right? Where you got to like get people invested. And I think that the first hour of this game is so incredibly good that I just honestly, it's been amazing playing it again, because I forgot in a lot of ways, like really how they set it up. They set it up with his wife, and you know the goal is he's trying to find his wife. She's been missing.
Ethan, that's his name, right?
Ethan, yeah. So, and then you get introduced to the family, of course. I really don't even want to talk about it, because I just want people to go and play it. I believe it is on part of the PlayStation Plus collection, right?
Is it? I don't know. I have no idea.
Either is or it was. I know it was free at one point, but so I know a lot of people are going to ask me, and they're like, Dustin, are you going to play it in VR? No, fuck no. I will not play this game in VR. I started it once in VR. I got in the house and I thought, no, I can't. Like, I like horror games. I play them from time to time. It's just too much in VR. It is just too much for me at that point. I can't do it. So, but it's supposed to be incredible in VR if you got it. So.
Sorry, I'm clickety-clacking around. It seems like it was free in November.
Okay. I knew it was free at one point or another. So if you already have that in your library, I mean, now's the time. Yes.
Which you should if you've been adding these PlayStation games to your library, like we always tell you.
Yeah, don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't want to have to give you a smack. You know what I mean?
Right.
Resident Evil 7 is awesome. It's a great game. Absolutely play it. It leads in the village, right? I mean,
yes.
It's so I feel like it is. I love how Resident Evil kind of does that, where some of them are interconnected and then some of them aren't. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to Resident Evil Village. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I would like to play it in VR, but I don't think I'm going to do that.
I still got to finish it.
You really got to.
Yeah,
you really do.
I'm almost there. Like I'm pretty deep into it. So like I don't know why.
When did you play it? Like 2 years ago? You got to start again.
No. I played it like a couple months ago. Because somebody gifted it to me on PC, and I needed to test out my new graphics card anyway. So I was playing it. And it looks gorgeous. And then I got distracted with moving around a bunch of shit. But I should just finish it. I hear it's like really good, and I really did enjoy it for the little time that I was playing it. So
I don't mean to be a child, but I have like a little dent in my head from my. My headphones here.
As most children do.
Well, I mean, that's something like a child would be like, look, Mom, I have my headphones left a mark.
Right.
All right. Guys, I'm playing Outriders.
Oh.
Game is fucking awesome. I want to repeat. Outriders, Colin Moriarty approved. It's awesome. Love it.
I am so curious. I have to know, like, what is it about it? Like, what is the hook for you?
I'm so glad you asked. So in games we often talk about how I like these games as a service games, but I play them alone, right? Like, and you can, but you're not necessarily supposed to. Like, I love The Division and The Division 2. These games are made to be played with someone else or other people, but you can play them alone. What I really like about this game is that it feels like it was made to play alone, and you can play it with other people. So it's the exact opposite. Whether or not that's true or not, I have no idea. But it feels that way. It feels like a single player game. It has a coherent story, an arc. You're going places. You're doing things. You're progressing. You're meeting people. You're getting lore. It feels really put together. And I was shocked. I mean, I'm totally shocked by how good this game is. I don't know what else to say. Like, I've played it I'm almost like at level 30, which I think is the cap. I'm not quite done with it yet, the story. And so here are a few of the notes I wrote down, and I'll get more into this when we do the review discussion in a couple weeks, but on the Sacred Symbols Plus episode. But it feels like it was put together for me. And I always feel like I'm playing around other people's experiences when I want to enjoy a game like this, because I really like the gunplay. I love cover-based third-person shooters like Kill Switch back in the day, and obviously Gears of War and stuff. And People Can Fly have a heritage with Gears of War specifically, so they've kind of taken a Gears of War mantra and approach. It's less heavy. The enemies are less spongy. Now, I like Gears of War's sponginess. I mean, Gears of War's notorious sponginess. I actually really dig that. But in this game, because it's faster, it's more wave-based and all of that, I feel like they've gotten rid of the sponginess, but they have the cover-based combat, which feels right. It feels almost like almost like a version of The Division. It feels like a version of Vanquish. It feels great. And I dig the story. And what's interesting about that is that there's two things. Number one, everyone was making fun of the story. And I was like, I don't know why. It's really good. And number two, in my opinion, is that it seems to have started out in a certain way. And then when it didn't go that way, I was disappointed. And then I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense. And I'll just say what it is, because it happens right at the beginning of the game. It feels like you're going to a planet, like another planet, to search. Like you're there, you're the explorer, you're boots on the ground. But what ends up happening is that like it's 30 years or so after that. And it's awesome. It's just a super cool story. It's about humanity dying on Earth. They put up these two massive spaceships in orbit to build them, to get humans off of the planet. One of them blows up, so they lose half of the people immediately. The other one goes anyway. And I don't know, man. I dig this game. I really, really, really like this game a lot. And I don't want to gush about it too much, but it is free on Xbox Game Pass if you're an Xbox player. I bought it on PS5. Very happy to give Square Enix my money. I like Square Enix. This is what John Garvin's talking about, isn't it? Well, no, I wouldn't have bought it sight unseen. I won't even do that. I won't even do that with Returnal. And I know I'm going to buy it the day it comes out, because I just don't want to. I don't want to pre-order games. But anyway, Outriders is awesome. Definitely check it out. Chris, I mean, you're surprised by this assessment? It seems like.
I don't know if I'm surprised by it. I think like of all the loot-based kind of shared world games that exist, I do think this is the one that is most tailor-made for you. I think it is the most single-player seeming, which so I knew that you would like it in that way, but I don't know. Like, to me, I couldn't get over the fact, and I brought it up when I mentioned it the first week that I played it, where it's like it reminds me so much of like Fracture and these like old like AA kind of like, here's the chest high wall room and here's another chest high wall room, and it's not that it's bad. It's just that it's entirely serviceable. Like, there's nothing particularly bad about it, but there's nothing particularly amazing in it to me, that I'm just confused at the outpouring of affection for it. I'm happy for it because it means there's like a new IP that people love. That's like great. That's great for the industry in general. I'm not sure what this game, outside of being, and maybe this is really all it does, is it feels like a single player game, which is something that this genre is very bad at doing. Like, even Destiny, as much as I love Destiny, doesn't feel like a single player game at all. Like, definitely Destiny, even in its best single player moments, feels like I need people for this. So maybe that's the special sauce that, because I'm not somebody who needs it, I'm not fully appreciating it. But I do like the gunplay. The gunplay's fine, and the cover mechanics are fine enough. I'm just, I don't know, maybe I gave up too early or something, but the story just seemed bizarre. It seemed like a lot of it seemed like the I don't know if this is gonna make any sense, but it almost feels like everyone is like, everybody's personality is like the meatiness of Gears of War people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Totally. You can definitely see the heritage, like the epic heritage with People Can Fly, right?
Without
you can definitely see it. I feel like one of the cool things about the game, from a story and presentational standpoint, though, is it kind of just embraces what it is. Mm-hmm. And in some way, it seems more believable than something like The Division, where The Division tries to be real grounded, and it is. I love Clancy stuff, I mean, it's not Tom Clancy's dead, but you understand what I'm saying. I like that kind of intrigue. But when you take it very seriously, like it's Red Storm Rising or Hunt for Red October or something, then you can't have that much fun with it.
Right.
And I feel like at least I can't. So like, I dig that it's like, it's full of characters. It's full of weirdness. It's full of consequence, which I dig. And there are two things that I wanted to say about it that I guess aren't the most complimentary. The first thing is that I think that the world tier system is confusing. I played almost half the game on easy without even knowing, because the world tier. So for people that don't know, I think there's like 20 world tiers in the game or something. And the higher you set it, you have to unlock each one. The higher you set it, the better the loot is, but the harder the enemies are. And in the beginning of the game, it just takes you from like you level up 1 and then you go to the next one 2, and then it just stopped. So then I was like, oh, I guess the game's telling me this is where I belong, like either based on my skill level or that I'm playing alone. So someone on Twitter was like, what are you doing? That's like easy or normal. And I'm like, oh. And so I ended up like on 2 or 3 levels ahead later on. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. So that wasn't communicated well to me. The other thing that I think is frustrating about this game is time to fire is too long. Not only in the beginning of the game, but just when you're getting into it. I almost feel like one of the cool things about the interconnectivity of the game is that like there are hubs, and then you're in the hub, and then there are these quick travel points. And I'm wondering, like, why don't we get rid of all the spaces in between? I don't want to run from one space to the next. I want to like go to a menu, and the game, because the game, it's a compliment to the game. The game is so fun. Don't make me run around for 10 minutes. Yeah. Let's just go to a menu. Let's go select the quest, and let's just go. So that's the other thing that I think and the time to fire in the beginning of the game is unacceptable. Yeah. It reminded me a lot of the machine games Wolfenstein from 2013, where it took like fucking 8 million years for you to start playing. It's too long.
It reminded me of those double A intros to those old games. It's like the start. I heard that the start is like the weakest part. And that's what I heard. Like story wise,
it is definitely.
And I, in fairness, I did give up pretty quickly after the start. So maybe I can get into it. But that time to fire was ridiculous. And like it got to a point where I was like, can I run in this game? And they don't let you run until like a weird amount of time into the intro. And you're just like pressing all these buttons because I don't know about you, but like whenever I try a new game, I press every button to see what everything does. But this is one of those games where like they don't really unlock every button until the game tells you that you can press that button. So it's
they want to feed you everything, but you don't really need it. You know? We know.
Like I know I can sprint. It's a shooter. Like I don't know.
Dustin, what are your impressions? I mean, I know we talked a little bit about the game, but you were nodding in agreement that the time to fire is too long.
Yeah.
You didn't hang around, I assume?
No, I didn't. And I think that it's just, I have a thing, maybe I'm broken inside, but I no longer care for, yes. But I no longer care for loot-driven games that don't have a stronger online component. Because for me, when I play Outriders, I'm like, this is pretty fun, but I'm getting kind of the same grindy, in a good way, grindy feel that I get from Destiny 2. And I would rather just play Destiny 2 because that character is going to continue on with me. So I don't know. It makes logical sense in my brain. And also, the PC version of this game, unexcusably buggy in a lot of areas.
Not our problem.
No, apparently not. Apparently they just... So...
Well, I heard that, and I know you struggled because you got code from Square Enix from your own website. Yeah. I feel like the one thing I did want to say, guys, and I don't know if you got far enough into this, I did forget this. I usually don't get too deep into reviewing games like this on the show, but I guess it shows you how passionate I am about this game for some reason. I do love the clever interplay between using your skills and healing yourself. I don't know if you guys got far enough into the game for that, but I'm playing as a pyromancer. So like when you use your flame attacks, some of them, instead of having like a shield like in Borderlands or in The Division, or instead of having like health packs like in Wolfenstein or something, you basically just lose there's no shield, like permanent shield, and you just lose energy pretty rapidly, and you're constantly refilling it. It forces you. Don't we always talk about how like I hate when games put things in and they don't make you use them? Like there's just no reason for any of this stuff. Like Batman games are full of that stuff. This game, like you're going to die in about 2 seconds if you don't use your skills, because you can't survive. And I think I've never quite played a game like that.
It reminds me a lot of the way Doom Eternal does it, where
that's what I was gonna say.
You have to kill to heal. basically. And it's like, it makes you want to like use everything that you have because, you know, ammunition is so low and you need to chainsaw to get ammunition and you need to flamethrow to get armor and like all these different things. It's like, it reminded me of that in that way. And that I appreciated. The fact that it kind of propelled me into combat as opposed to like making me feel like I had to stay back, which is a little bit at odds with the whole cover shooter thing. That's a bit of a disconnect to me where it's like the game's kind of built around cover, but also like running face first into firefights. So it's like a little bit disjointed in that way, in my opinion. But I do like the way the interplay between the abilities work. Are we all pyromancers? Because I'm pretty sure that Dustin was as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
So
that
we just all picked the fire one.
Yeah.
Well, because they kind of introduced the 4 classes and they kind of talk about like, well, one's the heavy, like the tank, one's like kind of like it's kind of like Borderlands in a way. And so I was like, well, I want the one in the middle. And there was 2 of them. And so I just kind of chose the pyromancer. It worked. I like that character. I don't know if you guys fought any of the enemies that send the fire tornadoes out at you and they just follow you. Have you guys gotten that far? So there are like enemies called captains that you encounter and they can use skills, and there's like just this one, I don't know if I have access to it, but I just haven't equipped it, but there's this one really creepy attack that's scary as shit where like a huge flame tornado just appears on the screen and then it just follows you like really slowly. Like if you go to the next set, it just like kind of just creeps up on you like Michael Myers just walking very deliberately towards you. So anyway, shout out to People Can Fly. This is my game of the year so far. Although let's say this is the game to beat. I mean, there's nothing else to play. So
yeah, that's fair. That's great. I'm glad you found one of these games that you like. Yeah. Yeah,
me too. This is what I was going to ask you guys, and Chris, I guess you'll have insight into this more than Dustin, although I think you both will, is that this was kind of, because people were calling this The Division meets Gears meets Destiny so much that I'm like, I wonder if I would like Destiny, you know, because as people will know, like when Destiny came out, I guess it was 2014, I talked about how I went through that really notorious moment in my life where I couldn't play on sticks because I was like losing my mind. We've talked about this on the show, like where there was like a few months where I like couldn't play.
Yeah.
And I famously went to Ubisoft to play Far Cry 4 and I couldn't play it. And these guys were like looking at me like I was a fucking idiot. You know, I was like, I don't know, like I'm broken. And then I finally got out of it. So I kind of lost the Destiny thing. But do you think I'll like Destiny 2 specifically, playing by myself based on the compliments that people are paying for Outriders? I know that one's a first-person shooter, one's a third-person shooter, etc. But what do you think?
It's hard to say because Destiny is very loot-driven, and it's very driven by getting armor and getting guns that specifically amount to building a character build. Like, oh, this gun lets me do this, and it pairs well with my chest piece that lets me do this, and that together allows me to do this crazy combo of different things. It's more about that and like the FPS gunplay than it is about feeling like a single player. You know what I mean? I don't know how to explain it.
No,
really.
I totally understand. That almost sounds too much for me. Like, like where the things, because the Division kind of does this, and some others that I play and mess around with, where everything interconnects, and I'm like, meh.
I'll say this,
you know, like,
as somebody who plays a decent amount of Destiny, it can be overwhelming. Like the amount of currencies and the amount of like different menus and sub menus. It's elegantly designed for how much is there, but it's still a lot to process. And even when like I take a break for a couple months, I come back and I feel really just swamped with information and just like really like, oh my God, where do I even begin? Once you get past that hump, it's really fun and really engaging and the gunplay is really good. But I would say like if you have that game, try it. But I don't know if you liking Outriders means you're going to suddenly appreciate Destiny. You might appreciate it more than you would have, but I don't know if it'll be, you know, a game of the year for you or anything.
Sure.
You know?
Well, that's good advice. I'm just happy that it came along. This is the greatest thing about kind of checking out when games are approaching, right? I hate previews. I hate reading previews. I don't even really like looking at trailers very much. Like, I'm just like, I don't know. Like, once I know a game, like Tales of Arise, we're going to talk about in a little while. Everyone's like, did you see the new trailer? And I'm like, I'm good. You know, like it exists and I'll play it when it comes out. And Outriders was one of those games. I think, Dustin, the only thing we don't know about this game is what its natural market position would be, because to Chris's point, it's part of the conversation right now for 2 reasons. Nothing is coming out and it was on Game Pass. So Microsoft basically bought Square Enix and People Can Fly a ton of press. I wonder, Dustin, if you think this game would be as big as it seems to be right now if it wasn't for free for half of gamers.
What's kind of interesting now, I'm thinking back about this, is that I did a preview for this game at PAX 2020 where I played 2 to 3 hours. And I need to go back and watch my preview to see what I exactly said about it, because I think my overall impression was this is a really fun game. It feels a bit generic, and I don't know really how to feel about the story, but I had a fun time playing it. And so I remember the comments on that preview where people were like, this looks like generic shit, another looter shooter, you know, stuff like that. And I'm wondering if this game was just released out into the wild for $60, or is it a 70 or is it a 60?
I think it's 60.
60.
I'll look.
Either way,
yeah.
Releasing it out $60 all platforms if it would have died on the vine, just because people aren't willing to take a chance, you know, on something that may look generic. And I think that the game still, from a visual standpoint, looks generic, but because a huge portion of the audience is able to try it, no strings attached. I mean, a string with your Game Pass subscription.
String.
That was the match that set the fire ablaze, for sure.
Yeah,
indeed.
I do think this game is huge because of Game Pass. Because like even when we talked about like when they Colin and I we talked about when they put the demo out, you know, our interpretation was kind of like, oh, they might not have confidence in this thing. You know, like they might just be like throwing this out. Just because I remember I thought like, oh, that shows a bit of confidence, and it's like, oh, or they just need to get it out.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So it was kind of up in the air before the Game Pass thing, and then suddenly all this hype blew up with it. So
yeah, it worked out well for them. I think what ended up happening was Square Enix was scared. I think they had every right to be. After what happened with Avengers, they lost a ton of money. They basically lost Outriders' budget on Avengers, and then. I think they went and found a suitor to get their money back. And I think they're probably happy they did. But yeah, its persistence will be a question. Dustin, to answer your question, it is $60 across all platforms.
Oh, not bad.
Not bad.
The only other thing I wanted to say before we move on to the news, guys, is I wanted to give a shout out to the show real quick. Jeff Scott wrote in and said, hey, guys, since I know none of you are actually going to play the show 21, I just wanted to give it a quick shout out for having one of the best trophy lists for a sports game in recent memory. No online trophies and no trophies tied to their microtransaction-filled card game. It seems like it's going to make a very, very pleasant and fun platinum, and it's something I wish more sports games would focus on. The game's getting decent reviews, not as good as usual, which is interesting, I think, because it's the first generational jump here in a while. But shout out to the show, which is the first PlayStation exclusive, in quotes, of the year so far. Yeah. So, all right. Let's get into the news. We've waited on this nugget long enough. Number one, after much drama, Sony has reversed course. It has decided not to close the digital PlayStation stores for PlayStation 3 and Vita after all. At least not yet. Word comes by way of a surprisingly contrite, albeit short letter on the official PlayStation blog from PlayStation CEO and President Jim Ryan, who noted in part, quote, recently we notified players that PlayStation Store for PS3 and PS Vita devices was planned to end this summer. Upon further reflection, however, it's clear that we made the wrong decision here. So today, I'm happy to say that we will be keeping the PlayStation Store operational for PS3 and PS Vita devices. PSP commerce functionality will retire on July 2nd as planned, end quote. Ryan states that the intention behind Sony's decision was to move resources into newer areas while retiring harder to support locales like PS3's and Vita's stores. But don't get too excited, because it's nothing necessarily permanent, though nothing truly is. That's because, according to the letter, you will be, quote, able to continue purchasing classic games on PS3 and PS Vita for the foreseeable future, end quote. So that's that. PSP is shutting down after all, and PS3 and Vita will remain for the time being. It's important to note that it's unclear if Sony is lifting the end dates for PS3 and Vita support, though it seems unlikely they will budge there. We remain hopeful as of the time of recording, PS3's and Vita's respective PlayStation stores launched alongside the products themselves, which came out in 2006 and 2011. So just to reiterate, the stores will remain up indefinitely. We don't know yet, and we've reached out, my developer Lilymo has reached out to Sony because we want to release our next game on Vita. We're unclear if they're lifting the cap on that or not. My assumption is that they aren't. Before we get into all the letters we got about this, Chris, what did you think of this news? This was truly surprising, I think, and maybe a good sign for the Sony listening a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's good. It makes me feel like they're actually paying attention. It's interesting because this is, Xbox just did this too with the whole Xbox Live Gold price hike that they reneged after that they backed off on after outcry, and I feel like it was a very similar situation here where enough people made enough of a big stink about it for them to actually like reevaluate their decision. And this is why it's important, by the way, this is why it's important to criticize these companies when they make stupid calls, because sometimes you might get what you want. And this is one of those situations, and we've had a couple of these situations with other, developers and other companies this year. So, I think it's great news. Ultimately these stores aren't going to last forever. They will eventually, like the foreseeable future, like sounds kind of nice, but there's just no way they're going to keep PS3 operational for like a considerably longer amount of time. Like I feel like maybe you got like, I assume like a year or two. Like I don't foresee these stores staying open for too much longer, but it's good that they listened, because I think the time frame was just way too short. Like you can't shut down a storefront like that with 2 months notice. Like I think it's just unacceptable.
I agree.
Yeah.
Chris, or I'm sorry, Dustin, what do you make of this reversal?
I want to focus on 3 interesting points from Jim Ryan's letter that really stuck out to me very quickly. Please. The first one is that at the beginning he says, upon further reflection, however, it's clear we made the wrong decision here. I like this, basically coming out saying, hey, it's not like, oh, we decided to change our mind. No, he straight up said, we were wrong. This is important, okay? We're coming off of something like, this is a different scenario, but Bethesda never apologized for the state of Fallout 76. On stage, Todd Howard was like, we got some things wrong. I can't remember exactly, but they never were like, we screwed up. And I think it's important for a face of a company to be honest, like we were wrong, and it doesn't make you look weak. It doesn't, it's not a negative at all. And I think it's respectful to your audience to be like, yeah, we're going to change things.
Absolutely.
The second thing in here is I found it really funny, where they're talking about, we decided to end it because of a number of factors, including commerce support challenges for older devices and the ability for us to focus on more of our resources on newer devices, where a majority of our gamers are playing on. It's like, okay, you had to put in that little bit that's like, well,
that's what I was going to say. It seemed to me that they were almost like, well, fine.
Yeah.
So we got the apology, but it's also like, well, fuck you. This is your fault because you're not even fucking using it. Like, it's a weird, like,
very
whiplash.
Yeah, definitely.
And the final point is just that actions speak louder than words, always, right? But at the end of the letter, Jim Ryan does say, I'm glad that we can keep this piece of history, of our history, alive for gamers to enjoy while we continue to create blah, 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 blah. So we see Jim Ryan acknowledge history.
Sure. Well, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
It's because usually he hates everything that's old. But I love that breakdown, Dustin, because I did take some of those salient points away as well. Although it did seem very Jim Ryan-esque, where it's like, well, we made the wrong choice. I appreciate it. We wanted to, because we know what they were thinking. We already went over this. Like, they have all these vectors open for attack. They don't need to keep all of these things open. They're not making a lot of money on it. But I am a little concerned about the indefinite nature of this. And actually, this gets into something. We have a few questions from the audience here that I wanted to get into that will allow us to explore this a little bit more. The first one comes from Josh Manzanares, who says, hey guys, with Sony making the absolutely correct decision to not take down the legacy stores, it makes me think that they have no plan for backwards compatibility on PS5. Do you think Sony made a ton of money on panic sales, making them realize they wanted to play that people wanted to play this content? I play PS1 classics on my Vita more than I play my PS4, and I buy them pretty regularly, but I know that's a tiny sliver of the general ecosystem. So I feel like there's multiple angles of this. First of all, the conspiratorial thing, right? That Sony did this on purpose. There's just no way that Sony did this on purpose. There's no money to be made here. There's no goodwill to be earned here. But Chris, I am concerned about Josh's point, because this is what I thought as well. I'm like, this means that there is no solution
in
the pipeline for PS3 backwards compatibility, which is to be expected, but kind of disappointing. What did you make of that?
Yeah, no, I think it definitely like confirmed that to me. You wouldn't, even just the way that they kind of announced their backing down on their initial choice. It was like, oh, we're excited to keep this part of our history alive, which means it's like they think that that's the only way to do that. It kind of comes across that way. It's like, oh, so there was really just, you guys had no intention at all of like fixing this problem that very clearly a lot of people care about. It's disappointing. It's disappointing that the only way to access these classic titles is to own a machine that is likely going to explode. If these consoles weren't made to last this long. They just weren't. Like, a lot of these things are going to start blowing up soon, or like frying, or just like the PSP's batteries recently started exploding in the last couple of years. So it's like, these things have a shelf life, and it sucks that you have to get your hands on ancient, tech just to experience stuff that really should be really easily accessible in 2021. There's really no good excuse for it, but it doesn't surprise me. I wish I could say it did, but this is to be expected, kind of. Take your victories where you can, I guess. These stores are still open, and you have access to these. I'm curious what happens to the patches that vanished.
I don't know if that was like, I was thinking about that. I'm like, was that a coincidence, or were they starting to fuck around behind the scenes and then they stopped, but like, why would you? That was the thing with the patching, where I'm like, why would the patches just start coming down like that? I don't know. We don't really know what they were communicating to their partners. We didn't get any communication. I mean, we literally got communication the same time as everyone else, but I'm sure their bigger partners might have known. And it's worth noting that their bigger partners might be really eager to get this shit down too. So we saw with Ubisoft, they're still supporting like Rainbow Six games on PS3, and they were probably like, God almighty, we can finally. I saw that they were still supporting a Tom Clancy game on PS2. I wish I knew which one it was. And I was like, what? So they're probably like really stoked to get rid of this legacy stuff, but they obviously can't now. Although a lot of that stuff lives on Sony servers. But Dustin, I wanted to ask this next one to you, because I am curious. This one is kind of funny to me, because I know a lot of people got burned like this, but I don't know why people were so eager to start buying things already. Trent Miller wrote in and said, "Hey buds, am I the only one who feels kind of slighted by Sony keeping the stores open? I mean, I am happy that they will stay open, but I'm also kind of bummed because I purchased a bunch of games that I don't know if I'll ever get to because I thought they were shutting down." This seems to have happened. Actually, Micah, my girlfriend, went and bought Tales of Hearts R on Vita, the physical copy, on eBay for about $100, which I still think is a pretty good price. I don't think it's going to get any cheaper than that, but she was, people were starting to get the wheels in motion, being like, all right, well, but I said it last week. I'm like, why are people scared about physical games? Number one, doesn't make any sense. And number two, why weren't, like, I was going to be like on August 1st or something, right? Or August 15th, I'll go and buy everything. But why were people already doing this? That was the biggest confusion to me. Like, weren't you going to wait and see if they had some sort of solution?
Yeah.
Even if it was outside?
Yeah. Like on especially digitally, like, they're not gonna like price hike on the PlayStation store. You could just wait and see how this thing shakes up. I didn't buy anything because I kind of assumed that something would happen, because the outcry was pretty huge, and also just like it seemed to me like they didn't really plan this well. It seemed to me like, okay, 2 months from now it's done. Like it didn't seem like it was obviously an official decision, but it also felt kind of haphazard and kind of quick, and like they didn't really think much through. So I don't know what to tell you. You can't feel that slighted if you made the choice to just jump on this weird bidding war. But
I totally agree. I especially because I'm not going for physical games anyway. So like I'm like, all right, I was gonna make like I have a shit ton of games on PS3 and Vita, but there are things I'm missing, and I was going to make a comprehensive list for August. But Dustin, did you buy anything in preparation?
The only thing I bought, ironically, is Tomba 2, because
the PS1 classic.
Yes. Yeah. Which, here's what happened. I'm trying to piece this together live, because I remember I saw a tweet, which I think this is the tweet. It's from Tweet Vita Review. With this got shared around, and I saw some people sharing it that They said, I was going to purchase some more PS1 classics, but seems some of them were silently delisted within the last couple of days.
Yeah, I saw that.
Now, there's a follow-up later that some of them were only on the PS3 store, but some of these ones from the very mysterious Monkey Paw Games were delisted or whatever.
Oh, yeah, we talked about those guys.
Yeah, so weird. But so I think that a tweet like this, or if other people tweeted similar type news, this is what caused the panic, is that we heard news of games getting delisted, whether or not it was a misunderstanding or not. People saw that info and reacted.
Right.
And we saw PS3 patches disappear as well. So yeah, I totally get someone panicking and starting to buy stuff, because the writing on the wall was that some of the shit could disappear at any moment. So if you want it, what's the difference between buying it now and in a few weeks, since nobody thought that Sony was going to reverse their decision based on their history?
Yeah,
So,
I think people just got to settle in a little bit, because I feel like this almost got weird, because I'll just reiterate, like, why was there a run on physical games? It doesn't make sense. You know, like, they're not making physical games for PS3 anymore. They haven't in years. So, like, why are people suddenly going and buying them? You know, like, those games are going to have an aftermarket regardless. That was the bigger confusion for me, Dustin.
the thing is, Colin, I think just to my take of the game thing is that people see the headlines about Vita shutting down. Vita is in the discussion. PS3 is in the discussion. You have some people that are then lightly interested in buying some of these games because they're thinking about it. You also have the opportunists that are like, I have these games.
Yes.
And so,
yeah, true enough.
Anytime
Very good.
there's like a feeding frenzy, right? Where you get, like, I was talking to my friend Phil. Right now, there's this craze going on with Pokemon cards and sports cards. And I'm like, it's a chicken or egg situation. Is it valuable because... Is it a perceived value in people's heads? Are they actually rare? Do people actually want these for the product, or do they want them to resell them? Do you know what I mean? And it becomes this crazy chaos.
Capitalism, baby.
So, and I think that was the case with the PS3 and the physical Vita games.
Well, that's a great point, in that I wasn't thinking that, like, because you can see all the eBay stats and I look at them sometimes, but like, there was probably a massive spike in PS3 and Vita games. Prices went down probably really quickly because there was so much more stock, and then they went back up. So, yeah, that's an interesting point. I never really thought about that, but yeah, that's capitalism in action, I guess. But speaking of this, Ian wrote into us, because this was obviously always my dream, but it's not going to happen. He says, we know now that the PS3 and Vita stores are staying live for the foreseeable future, but before that news broke, many were hoping for Sony to announce a huge sale on Vita games. I know I definitely would have partaken in that sale, but let's be honest. Sony was never going to have that huge sale, right? This is Sony we're talking about. Digital Vita game prices have been the same for years and years. I don't think there was a chance in hell that we were going to get a good Vita sale. That said, here's to the store staying live either way. I hope you and the boys are well. So this is a really interesting point too, because I had said, guys, that wouldn't it be cool if a more coherent Sony was like, we're going to fucking cut prices on PS3 and Vita 90%. You know, like, I would have loved something like that to happen, but there's complications for that. Number one, if your games are cross-buy or on other platforms, then you're really starting to undercut yourself on current gen platforms. If your game's on PC, for instance, and PS3, and you're charging $19.99 on Steam, then you're charging like $2 on PS3, it creates like a huge problem for you. So I don't think that was going to happen. So I don't want people to feel like they're missing out on that, but I will say that Lilimo would have gladly participated in that, even if it would have been incoherent. Like, our games would have been $10 on Xbox, but $1 on Vita. It's like, fuck it. But now we don't need to do that anymore. And I actually think that never really behooved Sony, because if they wanted to get as much money out of this, squeeze this orange as much as possible, then they're not going to lower prices. They're actually going to keep prices exactly the same. And Ian makes a good point. Vita prices are stubborn as fuck on the PlayStation Store. I actually went, and I couldn't believe it, because I went and bought God of War Collection on Vita last week, because we're doing God of War, the original one, on Knockback soon. And I have the Platinum on PS3 already, but I wanted to get it on Vita. And I was shocked. It was only $15, because I went to the store and I'm like, this is going to literally cost me $40. I know it. And I know this bullshit because it's like when I went and bought Ys 8 last year, it was like $15 on PS4 and $40 on Vita. And I'm like, all right. So anyway, boys, we'll see how it all shakes out, but it is a great Phoenix down, let's say, for our beloved PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita. And we're very excited about that. I do expect, though, that the devil is in the details and that these stores are coming down.
Now, Colin.
Please. Dustin.
Question. Okay. Sony developers, right?
Right.
Talking to Barry. Barry's tweeted. There's currently no information on if games are going to be able to be put on the store still. Yeah,
like I said, we don't know. I mean, we're cut. PS3 stuff is cut off in June, and I think, and no one's releasing PS3 games, but that's for like patches. And then Vita games, I think, are cut off in early July. And there are a lot of people asking, like, if we need to know. Like, this is the other part where, like, we actually reached out to our intermediary at PlayStation on the development side, and they don't know.
That's what I was hoping you would say, because I didn't know if that was shareable information.
No. I mean, I don't know why it wouldn't be. They don't know. I mean, we asked and they don't know. I mean, as soon as we know, we'll tell everyone.
Why don't they know?
That would be a secret.
Why wouldn't that person know? Like, what is going on at Sony that they're like, hey, we're going to make all these big announcements, and a very key detail, we're not going to tell the reps that, or maybe they haven't decided. Like, what's going on?
This was a decision made by looking at spreadsheets. I mean, that's obvious, right? Because I know people at Sony that are smart, that are gamers, that would have sat in that meeting and been like, are you sure that you're just going to shut down the PlayStation Vita store? Like, why? And the fact that they're still shutting down the PSP store, it is worth noting the PSP store was ostensibly shut down like 4 years ago. So people are getting really upset about nothing, but they are getting rid of PSP functionality. So that just tells me that they are going to get rid of PS3 functionality. They are going to get rid of Vita functionality. PSP is older than those two devices. So it makes sense that they would shuffle that one out of the door first. So I'm a little nervous about this.
Foreseeable future just means they don't have a date yet. But the date is coming. Like, they're not going to keep these things open for long.
Now, can I tell you guys just a pet peeve I have real quick? Just not a pet peeve. That's not even the right terminology, but just a specific annoyance about this situation that I have. And it's not this developer's fault. I want to be clear about that. But there's a developer called Flying Oak that is actually releasing a game called Scourgebringer, which comes out on Vita. It's out on Vita now. And that was scheduled to be the last Vita game. When you download it on the Vita store, it is literally titled The Last Vita Game, like in the download bar. Now, the guys said this, that Sony told them that their game was going to be the last release. Someone over there knows. And I'm just saying right now that, like, someone is not telling the truth about who knew what and when. How the fuck would they know? And then why would Sony tell them and not anyone else?
Yeah.
I'm really salty about that. Not because it wasn't us that was told, but because it was like, you can read the cascade of canceled Vita games. There's a lot of them. People are planning on releasing Vita games. Then people are coming back out and saying, like, well, we don't know, and we still want to get our games on Vita. Just fucking talk to us, Sony, please. It's really not that hard. It really isn't. But we're back on the right path, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
All right. This news just broke this morning as of the time we're recording this.
Yeah.
Number 2, Sony has revealed a second-party exclusive partnership with a brand newish team called Firewalk Studios. Word comes by way of a post on the official PlayStation blog, which notes that the studio, founded back in 2018, has struck a deal with Sony to create a PlayStation exclusive multiplayer game. Literally nothing else is known about the game, and it's important to note that this posting doesn't explicitly say it's a PlayStation 5 game, meaning that this game will likely come to PC 2 and maybe even PS4. However, the leadership behind the team is quite noteworthy. Ryan Ellis is the game's director. He was the creative director at Bungie on Destiny. Elena Sigmund, the game's executive producer, was BioShock Infinite's producer and worked on Destiny as well. Ex-BioWare devs, ex-Respawn devs, and others are on the team too. The head of Sony's first-party team's ex-Guerrilla lead, Herman Holst, gave interviews with some outlets about this deal, but it says the same boring stuff a lot of these have been saying, that the studio is created to be sustainable and Sony wants to invest outside of single player. Just the same kind of shit they say. However, in an interview with Japanese publication Nikkei, as translated by website Video Games Chronicle, PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan notes in part that the team isn't abandoning exclusives and maybe even some acquisitions. He said in part, quote, "We have been quietly but steadily investing in high quality games for PlayStation, and we will make sure that the PS5 generation will have more dedicated software than ever before." We have repeatedly engaged in mergers and acquisitions, including Insomniac games in the US. We will not rule out that option in the future, end quote. Thought that was a little bit of a weird quote because Insomniac was literally the first team Sony bought in like 8 years. So it's not, or 9 years. So it's not like they're like really wheeling and dealing out there on the market.
Well, they just bought Evo.
That's right. They bought Evo. But Sucker Punch was purchased right after Infamous 2. And then all of that time until Insomniac was purchased.
Crazy.
So just think about that. So he's acting like they're like really stacking up. I don't know about that. But Chris, let's talk about this game, the studio. We don't know anything about it. We don't know the name. I joked around on Twitter. At least they have a logo for the studio. The studio actually exists.
Not like Haven.
Right. This is kind of what I've been talking about, right? They tried it with Predator. People still play that game from Ilphonic, but they need a big multiplayer game, I think. And this might be it. So what do you think about the possibilities here, especially considering the pedigree of the team?
No, I think it's good. I think it's a wise move. I think they do need more AAA multiplayer stuff. I think the first party's getting a little bit stagnant, a little bit stale. Good material, good food, but maybe we're a bit. You can only have the best food every day for so long before you just kind of want like pork rinds or some fucking nonsense. But I would just say that while this is good news on paper, this is great. A new PlayStation focused multiplayer thing. This is ultimately still just a logo and a name. This is probably not. We're not going to see this thing until I would 2023 earliest. Like this is probably like a ways off. So I wouldn't say it's anything to get too excited about in the short term, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. Did you see when they announced it this morning that they tagged some random guy instead of the studio?
Oh no! Did they delete it?
Yeah, it was like Firewalk Studios, and it was just some guy named like Evan or something.
That would have been awesome if that really was what it was. Like,
yeah.
That would make sense.
No, this is good news. I think it's definitely more interesting and more substantial to me than Haven is. I don't even know what the hell that is.
No, I don't either. In fact, Chris, so. And we'll talk a little bit about this. Maybe I'll throw it over to Dustin, get his opinion on this. But we don't really know. Like why they're not communicating more readily on what products are. Even if, let me give you an example. Like if you read the PlayStation blog post, not the Herman Holst interviews that on like IGN and everywhere, it says very little. And they don't even say on the platform or on PlayStation blog what platforms it's for. But then I tweeted that out and people were like, oh, well, here on gamesindustry.biz, Herman Holst says that they're investing in next-gen PlayStation game. And I'm like, Dustin, why can't they just talk? I mean, this is good news. So why can't you? And a lot of people brought this up. Like, why isn't there a video? Why isn't there?
Right. Yeah.
Like, why aren't there video interviews? Like, you clearly, unlike the Haven thing, which was put together like overnight one day, this was like planned out. There were embargoed interviews with outlets. So this was news that was known behind the scenes. And I just wonder, Dustin, like, why do you think that they just won't, like, if you're excited about it, I'm going to be as excited about it as you make me. So with Haven, to Chris's point, I am zero excited. There's not even a logo. The website leads to a text document. With this, it's like, okay, a little bit more excitement, but you're still not being specific enough. And you're also not playing into it enough. An announcement is fine, but you only get one pop, right? You only get one punch, one first punch. So what do you think? Do you think they're doing it more right or more wrong? Because I feel like this is something that should be on the PlayStation YouTube channel, big video, 10 million views, lots of time and effort put into it. What do you think?
I think that we're still seeing some of the old Sony strategy, but mixed in with a new one that isn't quite working, I would say. For example, right now, Xbox, they are just like, every other week, it feels like they're just putting a jab, a punch, right? They're constantly in the news cycle, right, for all positive things. Mm-hmm. Sony loves, to put it frankly, to blow its load in the biggest possible way, all at once usually. We've seen this in past E3s where they're like, Last Guardian, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and Shenmue 3, which again, no one cared about Shenmue 3, unfortunately. I mean, sorry for those guys, but they like to put on a big show. Now, we did see them get away from that, especially that last E3 performance with the church and all that with Last of Us. But I think that they are saving whatever this game is, because I think, I don't know, Chris saying it's far away. Maybe I'm missing some of the details, but if this studio has been around since 2018, they could have had, is it possible that they have a game that they've been working on and now they just sold it?
I don't know why they wouldn't show it. If that's the thing, it's like 2018, it's a while, right? That's old, but it's 2021 now. It's been 3 years and no concept art, no, just nothing. Not even like a premise or just we're working on a multiplayer game. Yeah. It's just the name of a studio and people behind it. Like, okay, so here we got people from Bungie, we got people from Irrational Games. That's cool. That's very neat. But it reminds me of this reminds me a lot of like The Initiative when when Microsoft started talking about The Initiative, where it's like, hey, we've got this studio, we've got people from like wherever the hell they were coming from. I think there were some people from like some Sony studios, some people from like
everyone in the LA scene basically.
Yeah, and you know, that was cool, and it had apparently like been percolating for a while, but it wasn't until like the last year or so that we saw anything out of that. And it strikes me as another one of these things where it's like, this is a good thing that's happening, but I still think this is a ways off, especially with like, you know, the way COVID has impacted development and, you know, even just the way that COVID has impacted development of games that have been in development since 2018, like presumably the next God of War, which is still not coming out this year. I don't know. Like the way that they went about announcing this leads me to believe that this thing is like at least, I would say, 2 years away. Because they need enough time to kind of build excitement for this thing. They need time for a marketing cycle. They need time to build up this studio's name, which is currently like, I mean, it's got the zero name. Yeah. You know, I just don't believe that this is super close.
So I have a small theory though, real quick. It's just that,
Please.
Sure.
And please chime in if you think that either one of you think that I'm off base on this. But I'm wondering if some of these stranger announcements that have no substance aren't really for us, right? Because Sony does need to feed out stuff to investors here and there, right? The investors want confidence in the fact that there are products and things in the pipeline. I don't know, Colin, you're more privy to the quarterly financial stuff of Sony, but is it possible that some of these lighter announcements are just for stockholders more than they're for us?
It could be. They're a publicly held company, so they have to communicate that way. They communicate, like you said, in their quarterlies as well. I feel like there's like multiple angles to this. First of all, to the point about like, what is the game? What is the studio? This is another, well, you know what? Let me read this question off from Chase Williams, who wrote into us on Patreon, because this kind of gets into what I need to say. He says, hello, Sacred Ones. Longtime listeners of the show may not be able to list every single communications misstep of the past few years, but I think we would all agree that the PR strategy of Sony is at best scattered and at worst an active liability that undercuts their brand's reputation and even damages their third-party business partners at times. I'm thinking of the game release date announcements that have been buried by bigger news here. So he's talking about the PS3 and Vita, but he asks, what responsibility does someone like Sid Schumann, who's the head of PlayStation Blog and their communications team, have as the head of global content communications? I know Sid personally, nice guy, so nothing against him personally, but here's the problem, because you guys were asking like, well, what is the game? Is it available? Like, well, if you kind of triangulate everything, Herman Hulse said somewhere that he played a build. That's not in the fucking PlayStation blog post, you know? And the team apparently started talking to Sony in 2018. Also not in the PlayStation blog post. So we don't really know. And I'm not totally confident on having a playable build. I don't know if you guys remember when I was at Kind of Funny, we used to do E3 for IGN for a couple of years. And in 2015, or it might have been 2016, I think it was 2015 though, Shuhei Yoshida came on the show and said he was playing a build of Sucker Punch's next game. We knew at the time that was Ghost of Tsushima, which came out 5 years later.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter what they're building. And that was Ghost of Tsushima. We know that now. So I wonder if is it Sid Schumann? I don't think so, but they need to communicate better. Like why don't they sit down and say, like, these are the things we need to hit, right?
Yeah.
This is the way. We can't put this genie back in the bottle. Once Jade Raymond Studios announced, it's announced. Once Firewalk Games announced, it's announced. How do you energize the audience? And I keep saying that they don't need to buy the cow, and I don't think they do. I know we get really excited about first party acquisitions and all of that, and I think we'll get a few of those, but they don't need to buy the cow. So I have no problem with these second party relationships. This is actually the way you start building a rapport to buy the team later if you want to. But I just don't understand why they can't just say what they mean, say what's important, not scattershot everything out. So you have a little bit here on gamesindustry.biz, you have a little bit here on IGN, you have a little bit here on Polygon, a little bit here on the PlayStation blog. Like, you have to have one place for people's eyes to go. And I just don't understand what they get out of just these really paltry announcements. This is not the way you announce things that are exciting. It's the same thing we were talking about with God of War 2. They announced God of War 2 with a fucking logo.
Right.
It's God of War. You know, it's God of War. It might even be God of War might be their biggest IP right now. You announced it just with like some stinger. It doesn't make any sense. So to Chase's question, I don't know why they have a communications problem. I don't know if it's Sid Schumann's fault. They have a communications problem. They have a communications problem internally. I just told you.
Yeah.
Some studio for months knew that their game was going to be the last Vita game. They said it. You know, so
it seems like their communication is really, really inconsistent. It seems like with some people they're able to communicate very, very clearly and be very forthcoming, and with other people they seem to just be like, just forget that they exist. And it doesn't even seem to be like particularly thoughtful. It doesn't even seem to be like, oh, you know, we pay more attention to this because this. It literally just seems like whatever. It's almost like they just come across, it's almost like they read emails once a day and they read like the first email and then respond to that one and that's it. And then like they wait for the next day and then like whatever the first email is again, it's like then there's like hundreds below it that they don't pay attention to.
They're just buried.
There's no rhyme or reason to the lack of communication. And like Herman Hulse saying that he played a build of this thing and it not being in the announcement is just a huge omission. It doesn't mean much because, I mean, you know, The Last Guardian had playable builds for how long? Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, right.
You know,
my friend Ryan Clements played it on PS3. He played that build. Yeah. I mean, that build existed.
Not even to mention like Dreams and stuff like a playable build doesn't mean anything. Like it means that progress is happening, but it doesn't speak to how far away something is. And I could be wrong, but I believe that whatever this game is, it's 2023 in all likelihood.
I would agree. Maybe I totally agree with you.
2022 if we're real lucky, but it looks like 2022 is God of War time. So I don't know. I don't know what that's looking like.
It's also worth noting that after God of War, we don't know any first party games coming out. So we don't know like what they have to make room for after that. I mean, there might be something else. I have no, there's definitely, I hope there's something else. So we'll see. But there is one other inquiry here from Blake Head, who wrote into us and said, boys, are PlayStation in trouble with their game development? Sony's too quiet about their games with the passing of the God of War 3-year anniversary, which was weird. I agree. Yeah. And Sony missing an opportunity to get, because that would have been a time to what? Maybe
show more from.
Yeah, show more or release some patches, do something, right? We're like announce the PS5 build of God of War that's going to come natively. I don't know. You don't want to do that, though. So he says, as well as the new focus on producing PlayStation movies and TV shows to seemingly fill the void, should we start expecting PlayStation exclusives to be few and far between? My answer is yes. It depends on what you're talking about with exclusives. When we talk about exclusives, we're not really talking about Predator, which is an exclusive. I mean, it's on PC too, but it's a console exclusive. We're not talking about second party games per se. We're talking about first party games, and this is what I said earlier when Jim Ryan's talking about mergers and acquisitions. Well, when you only have 10 or 11 studios to work with, and you're all taking 5 years to make your games, I mean, yeah, you better. The thing is that these games are going to be few and far between. That's why I think Sony is going out and getting Final Fantasy 16. Why they're going out, and getting Project Athia and all these things, because they know, right. And Sean Layden said it when he left, right? He said, like, the games are becoming too expensive to make and they're taking too long. And he's right. So it's very complicated. I'm not saying this is an easy thing to deal with,
No.
Chris. Yeah.
No, the thing that concerns me, though, and I hadn't really thought about it until, or I thought about it a little bit, but I hadn't thought about it much until I guess I read this question. But it seems like a lot of the time when we talk about PlayStation news, a lot of it does have to do with like something about a PlayStation IP becoming a TV show, or like a lot of like transmedia stuff. And it reminds me, it's not exactly the same, but it reminds me of the way... It reminds me of like the Xbox One reveal where like it was just TV. And it wasn't like games-based TV, fair enough. But like
sports.
I'm a little concerned, especially knowing what I now know about like, you know, Jim Ryan and just his approach to things. I'm a little concerned at a TV multimedia focus at Sony, because I don't think that typically ends well for, you know, console manufacturers. I just it's a little concerning.
Well, you see the connective tissue, because why would they want to remake The Last of Us? Well,
The show,
because the HBO show's coming out.
Yeah.
You know, why do they want a new Uncharted game? Because the Uncharted movie's coming out. Mm-hmm. You know, this is kind of, Dustin. It's funny because we talked for many years, going back to Podcast Beyond, like the one Sony mantra, right? Like they talked so long about like getting Sony to talk to each other, like internally. Now they actually are, and it's kind of like be afraid of what you asked for, I guess, because now they really are focusing on all of that. And hey, to the point about Sony's margin of error is not large because they don't have a lot of cash on hand, and so they can't take too many risks. And this is what I said. I don't know if you guys saw the Discord Microsoft deal fell through that they were talking about, and that was in the $12 to $14 billion range. This is money Sony can't even afford at this point. So like this is the competitor they're dealing with. And I just think people need to be eyes open about it. Whether or not it matters is another thing entirely, but we'll see. But congratulations to Firewalk. I'm pretty stoked. Dustin, you have something to say?
Yeah, no, I want to push back on one thought here real quick. You know, I'm going to defend Sony, which is something we have not done on this show for a while.
No, people are getting mad that we're being too hard on Sony recently. So you need to kick it up, defend them.
I think the God of War announcement makes sense, and it's not unprecedented. Okay, the launch night of the PS4. What did we get? A trailer for the next Uncharted game that had basically nothing in it. Do you remember
I forgot about that. That was right. That was an interview with Amy Hennig when they just showed. It just said Uncharted, right? Like not even 4 or anything. I forgot about that.
And so the thought that I just want to put out there is actually not a thought of my own. This is one of Kyle Bossman. He used to be at Easy Allies. Now he's just streaming and stuff, but he has his own personal channel. He had a video about the power of an unreleased game that sometimes, which I wouldn't argue is the case for God of War or Uncharted, sometimes a game's value is more important before it's released than when it's actually out. Think about that Inafune game for Xbox, Recore.
Oh, Recore,
right. Yeah. Nobody gave a fuck about Recore when it was out. It wasn't even important. But in the marketing cycle of the trying to bring back Xbox One, it was extremely important. In fact, that game's value, it had more value before it came out than when it actually did. So I can see Sony's strategy to be like, we need people to know that an investment in a PS5 today will be worth it tomorrow. So they're like, they wanted people to know, hey, the most important game that we had on the PS4, it's coming. And for us, I understand the frustration in that it's like, well, why wouldn't, if you had something, then show it, right? We don't want just a title, but I understand it, at least. So
I'm sorry, Chris,
no. Like I don't think. I think we understood why they did it. It's very clear that they were just like, "Hey, God of War's coming, and it's a console launch year. We got to make sure everybody understands what they're getting themselves into, and we want people to know that they're investing in shit that's going to pay off eventually." My contention with the Ragnarok thing was always the fact that they arbitrarily just like 2021. And it was just a logo, and it's just like that was so clearly not. I really still I would put money on that's just not happening this year. Like it's just not.
I think you said that even when it was a showed. It just seemed improbable.
The moment I saw it, I was like, because if it was really a year away, you'd show something, and it's just that's really just how it goes. Like even like my God, fucking Halo Infinite was like 3 years away, 4 years away, and they at least like showed like an engine, you know, like
they had the balls to show us that. What do they call that guy? The enemy?
I don't know.
You know what I'm talking about?
Wait, what
you
are
know
you
the weird goofy Halo enemy? What the one everyone made fun of when they? You guys don't talk.
Craig.
Craig, right?
I was thinking like when they first showed it off.
When they showed, okay.
When it was just an engine. But like, dude, like an engine for God of War would be more exciting than, you know, just the fucking logo with an obviously not attainable release date. And that's really the issue. Like, I understand the strategy of it. It makes sense from a business perspective to get your consumers riled up and excited and to know that something is coming. I just think that they could have done it in a way that was universally exciting as opposed to just sort of like almost placating, which is kind of what it felt like.
Right.
I want Dustin. Let me hit this. Before you cut in though. Let me hit this back at you. The shuttlecock. I'm going to send it right back over the net.
Should I bend over?
Please.
Well, this is vulgar.
So this got real sexual real quick, didn't it? I hear what you're saying about saying like, well, we have things coming for PlayStation 5, but they're not saying that. I'll have you know that we don't know if God of War is a PlayStation 5 exclusive.
That's right.
They're trying to have it both ways.
No, I know. I think God of War is a PlayStation 5 exclusive, but I do think that, but we are a little gun shy because they position Horizon 2 as a PS5 game, which it is not. And so I get a little nervous where I'm like, I don't know what the fuck is going on, but on the other hand, I do get excited about a Bethesda like approach where it's like, yeah, God of War is coming out in November. It's August. Here it is. For the first time. You know, that's exciting, but I just don't think they're going to do that. Sony has never done that, and that would be a totally new thing for them. I would like that.
Even The Last of Us Part 2 took, you know, we saw that game years and years ago. I don't know. All I know is that, like, whatever this new studio is, what the people there seem like a pretty good foundation for a new studio, especially for a AAA multiplayer kind of endeavor, and I'm looking forward to it. I think this is... We might be sounding a bit too doom and gloom here, but I do think this is positive news. This is probably like the best news we've seen out of Sony in a while, I think.
But I agree.
But it's still
just
very rudimentary and very.
I have to shoot from the hip, though. I have to shoot from the hip. Like it is exciting, but it's not because they're not doing it right. You know, it's just period. It's just they're not doing it right.
You're right, but it's a better step in the right direction than most steps that they've taken lately.
Sure, I agree. Dustin, what were you going to say? If you remember, I'm sorry I didn't interrupt you before.
No, the one other just thought that I had about, because I think it's a thing that I've seen a lot of people brought up is Jim Ryan saying there will be more exclusives on PS5 than any other PlayStation console. They're just going out and buying timed exclusives. Like that's clear as day to me. In fact, I don't know. Maybe they want to buy some studios, but Colin, I think you're right on the money that they're wanting to, you know, why buy the cow situation.
Yeah, because I also think the market's too hot for them. I just think the market's too hot. Like the studios are. Bethesda is not worth $6 billion. I'm sorry. And if that's the market they're dealing with, they can't throw that kind of money around, you know?
Right. And the thing too is that, remember, before the PS5 came out, the prevailing rumor is that Sony was going around to studios with a big old checkbook and trying to sign stuff. And so far they have. They signed Deathloop, Ghostwire Tokyo. They signed Final Fantasy 16, which is fucking huge. And that is huge. They were trying to get Starfield. Okay. And something that Carrick said that I thought was a very good point. They didn't get Starfield. That's clear now. That money didn't go anywhere. So, and I'm sure they were willing to put up a lot of money to get that.
Yeah, that's $100 million deal probably. You have to assume something like that.
They could take that and buy 4 other exclusives, right? So I don't like that that's the strat, but I'd be willing to bet on it.
Let me just to clarify, because I know people have been asking about this. I was just looking at Sony's market cap information. They have $123 billion market cap, meaning that's what they're worth on the market. But they only have $40 billion of accessible cash. So that's the money they have to run the business with, not to mention buy things with. Just to compare it with, Apple has $200 billion in cash right now. Just to compare.
Apple?
Like what you're dealing with, Apple, right. Microsoft has a comparable amount of money, but I'm just showing like there are tech companies and then there are tech companies, you know, right. And Sony is a pretty boutique company compared to some of these guys.
Yeah.
Sony's market cap, I want to be clear about this. Sony's market cap is $70 million less than Apple has in cash. Okay? Does everyone understand what I'm saying now? So if Sony was for sale at market value, Apple can go buy them and have $70 billion in cash left over.
It's insane.
So this is a company that is meagerly run compared to these other companies. And that's the thing I'm really trying to drive home to people. And that's why I think the buying the cow thing is totally makes sense for them. But I think these investments have to come a little bit later on. And maybe they're setting themselves up. Maybe they're like, we want to have a relationship with Firewalk. We need to see your games first. Sony doesn't buy studios sight unseen. That is true. Which is why I think the studios, Insomniac was always the biggest one, but Blue Point and others, like we say over and over again, and Supermassive Supermassive's off the market because they're with Bandai now with the deal. All right, let's keep going. There's a few other pieces of news to get through. This one just broke too, and really disappointing. Number 3, in a tweet from its official Investors Relation Twitter account, Polish developer and publisher CD Projekt revealed that its RPG Cyberpunk 2077, beleaguered on PS4 and largely unavailable since launch week, still surpassed a staggering 13.7 million units sold in 2020 alone. That's insane, since the game was available for just over 3 weeks that year and wasn't available at all on the biggest console install base, PlayStation 4. The game is still not available for purchase on PlayStation Store, though CD Projekt continues to work towards getting the game re-released on the platform and ultimately natively to PlayStation 5 by the end of the year, if all things remain on schedule. I saw this and I was like, this is fucking nuts. Not only because of the number, which is predictably high, but because they admit it. Chris, aren't you surprised that they said this at all? I mean, that was the big thing to me. I'm like, why are you saying this? It's because to me, it just says like, we don't really give a fuck ultimately.
I wouldn't have, I wouldn't be celebrating, if I was at CD Projekt. I would be kind of like buckling down and making sure this thing gets to the place that it needs to be. But I don't know, maybe they need something. Maybe they need something to feel good about over there. I would imagine that it's pretty bleak at CD Projekt, just the environment over there. They're probably not feeling too great. Maybe they just need some shot in the arm like, hey, we made a lot, just, you can't take that from us. Not yet.
Yeah. Anyway.
I don't know. I wouldn't have done that.
They cleaned up, man. Dustin, aren't you surprised that, this is something, they're a publicly traded company in Poland. So this would be in their quarterlies, but I was surprised that they just didn't bury it in there, just because it's like, this isn't what we're even focused on. And it did come from their IR, their investor relations Twitter account. So that is, to be fair, but it's not something you put in the wild, is it? Like, I just don't understand why you would celebrate sales milestones on a game that is catastrophically broken. Like the poster child of broken games.
Right. And that's my gut reaction was, this is something that is meant for investors. But even then, they went and put it on Twitter, which I don't know. I don't know how investing really works when it comes to the nitty gritty, but I feel like the gaming community is where they're going to latch onto that. So it feels like they're celebrating beyond trying to convince investors when they put that out on Twitter. Not the move, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. And by the way, I want to be clear. Like, I think Cyberpunk looks awesome. In fact, I've heard great things about it. It's broken and on our console, and you just have to keep your head down. Why are you announcing this? Someone did point out that the sales numbers seem to have gone down because of rebates or whatever, but it doesn't matter. That's more units than like God of War sold. And it did it in 3 weeks with a broken game. That's why, hey guys, stop pre-ordering your games.
Yeah.
Please stop. Please. I don't understand how anyone's going to affect change in the industry if we're just giving money based on IGN's and GameSpot's glowing previews. Those were pretty accurate, weren't they? By the way, pretty accurate.
Yeah. Whoops.
Number 4, very exciting news. The long-awaited next entry in Bandai Namco's Tales JRPG series finally has a release date after some unfortunate delays. Tales of Arise is set to come to both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, which was unknown until recently, on September 10th, later this year. Announced some 2 years ago, you'll recall that it was shown at the Xbox press conference at E3 in 2019, which was strange for a game like this. Arise will be the 17th core release in the franchise, one which began on Super Famicom back in 1995 with Tales of Fantasia. It wasn't until Tales of Destiny, my favorite, came to Western PS1s in 1998 that we got our first taste of the series, which has seen some releases across PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox 360, PS3, PS4, and Vita since. However, there's been a shocking lapse in releases from this series. The last Tales game came to PS4 way back in 2016 in the form of the contentious Tales of Berseria, while we had releases almost every year up to that point. Chris, I'll skip you on this one. Dustin, are you looking forward to this?
Yes, very much so. And I have to admit, never really fully played a Tales game because the first one I checked out was Tales of Zestiria, and everyone tells me that one's bad.
Yeah, Zestiria and Berseria are like the least positively received ones. And those are the two most recent ones.
To me, seeing the trailer for this game, it is clearly a huge visual step up, even if you consider a PS4, since this is coming out on last gen as well. It definitely feels like this could be this game's or this series like big mainstream success. This could be this series Persona 5 in a way, in that it's going to be potentially more part of the zeitgeist. Just from what I could tell, it looks awesome. Yeah,
it does. I only saw screenshots of it. I don't want to see any more of the game running, but I will say it doesn't look like a Tales game. Whether or not that's good or bad, I don't know, because Zestiria in particular was really different for a Tales game and people didn't like it that much. I actually remember playing it in Japan once before it came out and having some questions about why they're even going in this direction. But I think that Bandai Namco, very wily publisher, they know what they're doing and they have a new production team. All the old guys that used to work on Tales are gone. So we'll see. I'm really excited about it. September 10th. Really, really amped up to see if it's any good. I'm gonna have to really resist because I really don't want to ask for codes anymore, and I don't. But I'm so close with guys at Bandai Namco that I know I can get Tales like probably 2 months early, like I usually do. But I'm not gonna
get 2 codes if you do.
No, we're not. No codes for this show. No codes. Number 5. A new disturbance in the Force indicates a Knights of the Old Republic remake is indeed underway at seldom discussed studio Aspyr. News you'll recall was first broken by Last Stand's very own Mr. Matty Plays, the co-host of our Defining Duke Xbox podcast. These new confirmations come by way of 2 sources, Bloomberg's Jason Schreier as well as publication Eurogamer. The gist is this. The beloved 2003 Star Wars RPG Knights of the Old Republic, first launched that year on Xbox and PC with only a mobile port since, is being remade as opposed to merely ported. This is good news since KOTOR shows its age. However, this does come as a surprise, since the developer purportedly behind the project is known far more for ports than original work. Aspyr, founded in the 90s and purchased by THQ Nordic owning Embracer Group just last year, is actually responsible for the 2013 iOS port of the game, but it really does just do ports, with Star Wars Republic Commando and that random Stubbs the Zombie port being a couple of recent examples. However, Aspyr has roots with Star Wars outside of these products, and so we'll need to see what the future might hold. Knights of the Old Republic was summer 2003's biggest game and put BioWare on the map with console audiences in the years before they were purchased by Electronic Arts, which happened after the original Mass Effect launched. KOTOR's sequel, The Sith Lords, came to the original Xbox in late 2004, though it was developed by none other than Obsidian, which was recently purchased by Microsoft. I went back to read about The Sith Lords, which I haven't played in I haven't seen anything of in eons. I was trying to remember, that game came out like right before Christmas in 2004. I don't know if you guys remember, like they just squeezed it in. And I remember that being like really notable because everyone else had to wait a few months for it. Are either of you KOTOR fans?
So I actually recently started playing it and I actually really enjoy it for whatever and I enjoy apparently like the worst part of the game. So like I would consider myself a fan of it. I wouldn't call myself a storied fan of it. I haven't finished it or anything. And I ran into a game-breaking bug, so I couldn't continue. But it's definitely one of those games that needs a remake. If ever there was a game from that era that needs to be touched up, it's KOTOR, because as much as I enjoy it and as much as I can forgive some of the charm of its jankiness and its datedness, it's definitely it's definitely not up to snuff with modern stuff, even slightly. But it's interesting that Aspyr's doing this. I don't know. It's really their first thing.
Yeah,
right? It's really their first project like this.
Yeah, I looked. I was I'm not intimately familiar with them, but they're a port house. So I don't, and the connection to KOTOR is real because they are responsible for the only KOTOR port ever, which was the iOS port. Dustin, what are you thinking about this rumor of Aspyr possibly moving into the realm of the remake, which we haven't confirmed, but seems to make some sense because I think that just makes them more versatile to court, companies that want to work with them, and also to court talent that doesn't want to just make shit or re-release things.
Right. Aspyr is interesting just as for me, as a college kid and only having a MacBook as a computer, I was playing a lot of Mac ports of games when I was playing on not a PC, but a computer, we'll say a laptop. So I was, very familiar with a lot of Aspyr's ports. And so this is always cool for me to see the glow up of companies like this. And I think this is what they're doing with Knights of the Old Republic is what we've always wanted for Bluepoint. Is at least I know that their vision is to take old games, and I think it's cool that they have a very strict vision, but I also would love to see them do their own games. So we'll have to see. This is kind of their proving ground to try their own thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what happens with this. I do want to give another shout out to Mr. Matty Plays, of course, who broke this news months ago, and it kind of got under my skin a little bit yesterday because he had to kind of go and get his respect from people that were scooping the story as if he'd never said this. And this does happen sometimes where things are, reported and then people don't realize and all of that. And I'm not blaming anyone in particular, but that's been done to me and that pisses me off. Who's the one that told you Demon's Souls was coming to PlayStation 5? Me. Right? I'm the one that told you. But that just started circulating as if that just came from the ether. But I'm the one who told you that. So, so I'm happy that Maddie got his shine, let's say.
Yeah, because I remember reading this in the news and being like, why did I know this? It's because Maddie told me. I was like, oh yeah, fucking, I didn't even realize this was news because we just sort of knew this.
Right. And shout out to IGN, Ryan McCaffrey, my buddy over there, who did correct their story to give Maddie his credit. Number 6. Is PlayStation planning a video service under the PlayStation Plus banner? It seems like that may be the case, if a small collection of content published to its Polish website is any indication. As scouted by website Video Games Chronicle, Sony temporarily published and then pulled a Polish language splash screen for something called PlayStation Plus Video Pass. In Polish, the site teased, quote, a new benefit available for a limited time on PlayStation Plus, end quote. Details apart from that are scarce, though there's a key clue on the splash screen in that it overtly teases 3 specific films as being part of the pass: Venom, Zombieland Double Tap, and Bloodshot. As VGC points out, all 3 movies were produced by Sony Pictures. The website thus prognosticates, likely accurately, that Sony is probing the reaches of its already built-in business model with PlayStation Plus, which has more than 40 million monthly subscribers that may be enticed to stay around or potentially ante up more in the future for more access to films and television shows, which Sony dabbles in heavily. The Last of Us' HBO series, the upcoming Spider-Man animated series, Cobra Kai, The Crown, Better Call Saul, and The Goldbergs are just a recent sampling of that content. So Sony makes all those, and this is interesting. So it has been since revealed that this is real, and that's something that only is running in Poland as a test. Dustin, what do you think about this idea of folding video and movie and TV content into PlayStation Plus? It's great. It's just a little confusing because they just shut down PlayStation stores, movie and TV stores. So I don't know if they were doing that in order to entice you to have no option but to subscribe to PlayStation Plus. But this is real. This is happening. Confirmed by Sony. What do you think?
I just don't know who this sweetens the pot for. Is this a selling point for someone that's like, well, the 3 games a month isn't enough for me to sign up, or the online, but then they see the movies and they're like, there we go. Which, maybe it's just about customer satisfaction as well, but
yeah, it could be about value, right?
Sure. And, that's obviously something that people cannot stop saying about Game Pass. Not that they're wrong, but it's not what I would have hoped for, just in that, I don't know. I'm not really excited about watching 2 to 3 year old movies as a collection. Is okay. A lot of this stuff is either probably on Netflix or on other services already. What I would like to see them leverage is that they now own both Funimation and Crunchyroll.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's probably not a good idea to fold one of those services into PlayStation Plus. But, that could be cool to have like a couple of the top anime or something like My Hero Academia. You can watch through PlayStation Plus or something like that. But that's just me and my tastes personally.
I think you might be right. Chris, do you feel like they're priming the road again to try maybe some new original content? I mean, we talk about power sometimes. I thought that was a really nice idea. I don't know that it worked. I don't know that it was necessary, but to add value, I feel like this is what we were talking about with the synergy. I hate that word, but the synergistic kind of relationship between Sony Pictures, Sony TV, and PlayStation will allow them to leverage a really important part of people's finances from Apple all the way down, which is subscriptions and getting people to just not even remember that they have, at 40 million per, $9.99 a month or less, depending. Seems like a pretty good deal. So I'm excited to see how this goes. Is this something that interests you?
It doesn't interest me, but I do think it's not a bad idea. I've always been curious as to why Sony just never bothered folding their... The fact that Sony has a movie studio never really factored into PlayStation's strengths, and I always thought that was bizarre because, like, why wouldn't you leverage that in some way? Like, why wouldn't you be like, hey, all these Sony pictures are available through PS Plus because why not? It just seemed like this seems a bit late to do that, in my opinion. It seems like they should have done this a couple years ago. I feel like this would have been actually ideal during the launch of the PS4 or when Microsoft was doing their whole TV thing and it felt completely disjointed, and it's like, hey, you know what? Here's PlayStation 4 for the gamers, by the gamers, whatever the hell you want to market it as. But also, I forget what the fucking stupid thing was.
Yeah, no, that was awesome.
But like, why not have a response in that way where it's like, hey, we got a whole movie studio here. Here's I don't know any notable Sony pictures outside of like Spider-Man movies, but
they have a lot. I mean, I'm not sure a film guy. I'm not a cinephile, so I don't know either. But
they bundled the PS3 with Talladega Nights.
Yeah,
how do you forget?
And that was a UMD as well. I think the
was
biggest.
It? No,
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
no way.
I think Talladega Nights was new
the
enough.
PS3.
No, a UMD PSP. They
made the UMD came. The PSP came with like, "Are we there yet?" And other.
I see it. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, got you. Okay, so I feel like this is one of those things where you kind of have to deconstruct Sony's moves to see what they're doing. I feel like this is part of PlayStation Store's shutting down of TV and movies has something to do with this.
Yeah,
I think this is wise as long as it's not affecting their bottom line, which it isn't. These things just sit, And we already know that Netflix is going to have dibs on Sony's stuff, like HBO's The Last of Us and all of that, starting in 2022. So it's not like stuff is necessarily going to exclusively live there, but it's a way for them to, I think, see what's tempting about this, I think, for them is to say, like, listen, you might not want an HBO subscription, but maybe we'll have dibs on The Last of Us, and you just get that, right? Like, you just get The Last of Us, or you just get Uncharted. Things that kind of make sense for the audience. And then maybe that's a way for HBO to say, like, cool, that's a little way for us to kind of promote HBO. So a nice little way for us to promote our pictures or whatever. So,
right.
Yeah, so I think this is good. And I think subscriptions are so key. Clearly, Sony needs to start fighting in this space, or they're just going to pretend that it doesn't exist, which is just not going to be a viable option for them.
Yeah, and this is an area where I think they have a lot of leverage. Like, they don't have a lot of, they don't have as much money to throw around as Microsoft does as far as like game subscriptions go and as far as Game Pass is concerned. But they have an entire movie studio branch that's like, why not use that to strengthen your own services? Like, I think it makes a ton of sense. I just think it's like a little bit late for this, but we'll see how this goes.
Indeed.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. I want to see. I'm interested in a couple of things too. Why Poland? And I mean, that's a vibrant market, but it's interesting that they chose that as their test market. So I'll be keeping a close eye on that. That they acknowledged it. They had to acknowledge it because Sony PlayStation in Poland published it. But it was good that they acknowledged it, so we don't have to kind of wonder. And now we'll just wonder about how it does. Number 7. The MPD Group has revealed its data for March of 2021, showing us the month's best-selling hardware and software for the American retail and digital markets, the largest of their kind in the world, and a good indication of global happenings. The best-selling game of the month was Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, with Outriders coming in at 3. Very interesting. We'll return to that in a second. Miles Morales holding at 5, Assassin's Creed Valhalla coming in at 7, and Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, slotting in at 15. By the way, I was reading that climbed something like 60 spots month over month. So something happened there. I don't know what the hell was going on there. I don't know if like some big streamer played it or something, but it went from like 65. Crash 4 went from 65 to 15 month over month.
Was it
on the chart?
The PS5?
This is just cumulative
overall
across all platforms. So I was just wondering, like, did some big person play it? You know, I figured maybe that was something to do with it. So let's see, where was I here? When breaking down sales figures to just units sold on PS4 and PS5, these were March's top 10 best-selling games in America in order. Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, Miles Morales, Outriders, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Madden NFL 21, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Minecraft, Ghost of Tsushima, NBA 2K21, and Mortal Kombat 11. Miles Morales is the third best-selling game across all platforms so far in 2021, with Outriders already slotting in on that chart at number 10. Over the last cumulative 12 months, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War is the best-selling game, with The Last of Us Part 2 at number 7 and Ghost of Tsushima at number 8. Perhaps most interesting of all, however, is PlayStation 5's performance on its own. While specific unit numbers weren't shared by either NPD or Sony, PlayStation 5 was revealed to be the best-selling console in American history in both units sold and total dollar sales after its first 5 months on the market, better than PS2, PS4, Wii, and Switch. So, Chris, what do you think of that? I mean, we were talking a little bit about inertia last week, about how PlayStation can just succeed by floating. And it seems to be doing just that, even though it's impossible to find and it's $500. Best-selling console in American history after 5 months. How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense. I think they have a lot of hype built off the previous generation, and I think they generally have a lot of goodwill. And I think people understand that PlayStation is just a safe place to go when you want like good shit. You know, like it seems to be that, you know, games are always games are the primary thing that people care about. So like if you can more or less guarantee that every game you're going to get that's exclusive to that machine is going to be a banger, then like, you know, it makes sense to me why PlayStation is doing well. They just can't get complacent, you know, which is always my concern. It's just like, you know, you can ride this for as long as you want, but you know, you got to be proactive in this space because, you know, things don't last typically. Yeah,
I agree, especially because of the latency of decision making to end product, which happens in a lot of markets, of course.
Right.
Dustin, I'm wondering, the big thing to me in this NPD report is Outriders at 3. This is substantial because you assume no one's buying it on Xbox. There's no reason to, because you're getting it with Game Pass. So that's pretty impressive. That is already the 10th best selling game of the year, basically only selling on 2 of the 3 platforms.
Right. Yeah, I feel like we're in a brave new world of releasing games now. And I think that many developers are looking at the success of Outriders. It's like, okay, we have a cross-play game. And what if we just give it to one of those markets for free? It's not really free, of course. You guys know that, but
right.
Yeah. They're making money.
What does that do for the game? What is the value of the word of mouth that comes from that? Which that's talking about Outriders, not to, you know, we already talked about it for a long time, but you have a game that looks kind of generic and has a lot of things from other games. So from a marketing perspective, this game is maybe hard to get someone to commit to $60. But if you can give it to a larger portion of the audience for free and then convince all of their friends to go buy it on crossplay, if you've got the game to back it up, then that's a winning formula, it seems like.
Yeah.
Definitely. I totally agree with you. I think Square Enix made the right choice. I think they did it for a reason, like I said, but I think the reasons are legion, actually, because I think that they have quite a few things that they can show for. A nice revenue stream that makes up for the Avengers, nice, like you said, cross-play bait, even if you don't own Xbox. So congratulations again to People Can Fly and Square Enix for that.
That too, by the way, like this is, what is it, the number 3?
Yep, of the month and number 10 for the year. That
is pretty impressive considering, you know, all the problems that it had. Like there's like a huge inventory wiping thing going on right now, or like super recently there was like I think on launch day the servers were acting crazy, and this is not particularly all that different of a story to any other loot-based game as far as launch goes. Like, it still had its fair share of problems. It's still currently got its fair share of bugs, and it's still this high. That's pretty impressive.
I agree, and I also will say, just as an aside, that the game came out April 1st. So NPD does count usually like weird, like based on the weeks lined up, but it was only on the chart for maybe a few days.
Right.
So pretty big. We did get a letter, though, from Shadi Haddad on Patreon. I just wanted to answer this real quick. He said, 2Cs and 1D. Nintendo's first-party games are always in NPD's top 10. Maybe Sony's strategy with focusing on big-budget games to emulate Nintendo with having evergreen titles and a console that always dominates sales. Miles Morales in the recent top 10 is a good indicator after being on the market for 5 months. I like the way people are looking at this recently. I agree with that. I think there's two things, though, to keep in mind, Shadi. Number one, Nintendo's games always hold their value. So it's actually doubly impressive that their games hold on to NPD because they never put any of their games on sale. The second bigger thing, though, to consider with Miles Morales as a competitor is Miles Morales is a budget title, technically. So don't be confused by its position on NPD. It's more important about how much money it made. I would be a little more confused if a $40 game that was on PS4 and PS5 wasn't in that chart. What would be more interesting is how it would be doing at $70. I think we know. We'll get some good details, though, about Returnal. Probably not in April NPD, but May NPD. So we're going to have to be a little bit patient. All right, a few more ones to get through, boys. Number 8, the 21st Annual Game Developers Choice Awards. The 21st Annual Game Developers Choice Awards nominations have been revealed. And not surprisingly, Sony Studios dominate the list of contenders. Naughty Dog's The Last of Us Part 2 and Sucker Punch's Ghost of Tsushima, both launched exclusively on PS4 in 2020, received 6 nominations each, tied for the most total nominations with Supergiant's roguelike Hades, which is still not on PlayStation. Indeed, Sony's rival Microsoft has only 3 nominations to PlayStation's 15, with Media Molecule's Dreams hauling in 3 more, with 0 Game of the Year considerations to Sony's 2. The GDC Awards take place this July, and Sony's first party has won 5 of the previous 20 years. In 2005 with Shadow of the Colossus, in 2009 with Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, in 2012 with Journey, in 2013 with The Last of Us, and in 2018 with God of War. I assume The Last of Us Part 2 will win. Although Hades, I think, would be an inside contender as well. So nothing new to really say there, although this is about the proof being in the pudding, right? Even with the way things are, Microsoft, 3 nominations, PlayStation 15. So worth noting since we're being so negative. Number 9, there have been a couple of big personnel moves in the industry in the last week, one in Sony's first party and one with a newer and increasingly important partner. For starters, Sean Eskeg, who directed the very well-liked Uncharted expansion The Lost Legacy, is returning to Naughty Dog. As noted by website Push Square, Eskeg announced his return on Twitter. He had left Naughty Dog following the 2017 launch of The Lost Legacy on PS4, when he then went to Crystal Dynamics, the Square Enix-owned developer best known for Tomb Raider. It was there that he co-wrote and directed The Avengers. Before moving into a leadership role at Naughty Dog and Crystal Dynamics, Eskeg was a cinematic animator on games like The Last of Us and Radical's Prototype, which I know Chris likes. The other personnel moves come from Blizzard, the Activision-aligned developer and publisher best known for its PC offerings, but which exists in the PlayStation ecosystem in a big way with the competitive shooter Overwatch. Jeff Kaplan, Overwatch's director and lead designer, is leaving the company after 2 decades there. Before Overwatch, Kaplan was best known as the director of World of Warcraft, arguably the most popular and famous MMORPG ever created. When I saw Kaplan leave Blizzard, Dustin, I'll throw this one to you first. I was like, Sony should nail Kaplan down. This is one of the dudes where I was like, Jeff Kaplan's extraordinarily important. What did you think about him leaving Blizzard?
Yeah, it's a little confusing since he is still in mid-development of Overwatch 2. So, you know, it's not a sure sign, but it's definitely a concerning one when you see a studio or a development head like that leave mid-development. So, I don't know, maybe that game's further along than I think. I haven't really been following that with a close eye.
It's never good when your director leaves in the middle of the development cycle.
Yeah, exactly. So either way, though, I was wondering, you know, what is his plan? He's been in the industry for a while. You know, maybe it's time to sit on the beach and drink some margaritas and just hang out, you know, or maybe maybe his desire at this point is to do his own thing. He's been working for Blizzard for a very long time, since they were a still big but smaller company, and now they've become this huge corporate thing. Maybe he wants to do his own thing, start his own team. Either way, I wish him the very best. He's always been a very interesting guy to follow. I like his style. He's very direct. He's done videos where he's talking directly to the audience of Overwatch, and I've always thought that that's been a really cool way to handle things.
Yeah, Chris, what do you think about Sony? Maybe because I think Dustin's right. Like, Kaplan can go disappear. He's gonna have suitors. He doesn't have to do anything right away. But I wonder if he would fit with some sort of Sony second party project. In his expertise in both MMO but persistent shooters. It can't be understated how huge Overwatch is, and to be able to get the know-how of that into Sony would be pretty big, don't you think?
Yeah. No, I think he would be invaluable. I think, especially in an ecosystem that is, very kind of flooded with a lot of single player games. Like Sony's first party is very, very single player focused, and that's a good thing. I think it's a reason why they've done so well. We've got Returnal coming out very, very soon. And Ratchet and presumably God of War and Horizon. These are all single player games, and having somebody like Jeff in there to really lead a multiplayer endeavor would be really, really wise. Like you always want to build up the areas where you're not already fortified. And it's kind of one of those things where I was thinking a little bit about, like, I think Microsoft needs Kojima more than Sony does. Like, where it's like it would be super wise for Microsoft to go for Kojima, and it would be pretty wise for Sony to at least make a play here, in some way, shape, or form. Like, I don't know what they would be. I don't know what his plans are. Maybe he's not even remotely considering working anymore. That's always a possibility. But
yeah, I mean, he's no doubt a millionaire. I don't. That's the whole thing. Is that from this is what we were saying about buying the cow, about being judicious, right? This is the kind of guy that you say, what do you want to make a studio? Like, this is the kind of guy you go nail down, sight unseen, to build a team, but expensive too. So I don't know. We'll see, but best to him. And of course, I'm interested to see what SK does now that he's back at Naughty Dog. He's obviously got the Avengers stink on him, but that doesn't matter. He directed The Lost Legacy, which is very well regarded. So my assumption is he's going to be directing Uncharted, but we'll see. Number 10. Developer Extremely OK Games, previously known as Matt Makes Games, has announced its new game. It's called Earthblade, and it's a so-called 2D exploration game. Other than one piece of vague art and a lone soundtrack snippet, nothing else is known about the project. It's notable, however, since Extremely OK Games' previous two titles, 2013's Towerfall and 2018's Celeste, are critical and commercial darlings in the indie space. Meanwhile, the PlayStation blog has confirmed previous rumors and leaks. Capcom's Great Ace Attorney Chronicles is coming to PlayStation 4 on July 27th. These are console ports of the Japanese-only Ace Attorney spin-off games, The Great Ace Attorney Adventures and The Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve, released on 3DS in 2016 and 2017, respectively. The Ace Attorney series is best known for its Phoenix Wright titles, of course, and some of those games first came to PlayStation 4 in their own collection back in 2018. And then number 11 is, not surprisingly, more news of corporate consolidation is emanating out of the industry, although one developer in particular has opted to expand internally instead. The corporate consolidation in question comes by way of growing publisher Focus Home Interactive, which has announced the purchase of Stroom, I think that's how you say it, Stroom On Studio. They're French, I think. Stroom On is a small French team that has quietly worked alongside Focus Home for the better part of a decade, particularly on a shooter called Space Hulk Deathwing, which came to PS4 in 2018. Its next FPS, Necromunda Hired Gun, which people are really stoked about, is due out in June. And Stroom On is only Focus Home's second internal studio. It purchased Surge developer Deck 13 in 2020. Focus Home's most notable published games recently are 2018's Vampire and A Plague Tale Innocence and 2019's Greedfall, with the upcoming multiplayer game Hood, Outlaws, and Legends its next big release. Meanwhile, Hitman developer and publisher IO Interactive, stationed out of Denmark, revealed that it's opening a new studio in the Spanish city of Barcelona, making it its second external hub with another in Sweden. IO just released Hitman 3 on PS4 and PS5 at the beginning of the year and is working on a major licensed 007 James Bond game. So I'm really interested in Focus Home Interactive. We talk about them a lot, but I was reading a little bit about them. They have not invested in their own studios except for one other. Like I said, Team 17, or I'm sorry, Deck 13. I don't know where Team 17 came from. Deck 13, which are the guys that made The Surge, which I really wanted to play. at some point. I think The Surge was actually free on PlayStation Plus not too long ago. And then, of course, we know how Chris feels about IO Interactive. I think it's very wise to mine the Spanish game dev scene. There's just not many devs there. I mean, you have like a few, and like Mercury Steam and stuff. So that's an untapped market. And finally, number 12 is a wrap-up. Website Gamatsu reports Puzzler Retro Machina comes to PS4 on May 12th. Licensed brawler Jane Silent Bob Mall Brawl comes to PS4 on May 20th. I'm definitely going to pick that up. Horror game Song of Horror comes to PS4 on May 28th. Strategy RPG Empire of Angels 4 comes to PS4 at some point this summer. It's all scantily clad women in that game. Visual novel World End Economica Complete comes to PS4 at some point later this year. And racing game Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown is coming to PS4 and PS5 at an unknown release date. The website also reports strange management game Spiritfarer, which came to PS4 last year, has surpassed 500,000 units sold. Website Push Square reports adventure game Leisure Suit Larry Wet Dreams Dry Twice comes to PS4 on May 18th. Multiplayer shooter Lemon's Gate comes to PS4 and PS5 this summer. Adventure game Grotto and free-to-play game Bleach Brave Souls are both coming to PS4 at an unknown point later this year. Puzzler Summertime Madness and sim game Farming Simulator 22 come to PS4 and PS5 later this year. And remake Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection is coming to PS4 at an unknown point in the future. The website also revealed that popular fighting game Tekken 7, which came to PS4 back in 2017, has surpassed 7 million units sold. So congratulations to them as well. All right, boys. As tradition dictates, we end every episode of Sacred Symbols with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience over on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. We'll start with Anthony Mathers, who said, Colin, this question is for you, although I think the other guys can answer this as well. What purpose does IGN currently serve? I've been a fan of IGN since it was N64.com and yours since you joined Beyond. Modern IGN seems slow and pointless. Everything they do feels like an also-ran, chasing trends once they're well established, acknowledging speedruns years after GDQ was breaking $1 million in donations, for example. Now they don't even seem reputable after they threw Ryan McCaffrey under the bus with their 6 Days in Fallujah article. No one there seems to be a tastemaker, only covering smaller games once they're proven to get clicks. Undertale was reviewed 3 years after release. Finally, I hear news stories in Kinda Funny's Games Daily podcast before it's even mentioned on IGN. Now I go to IGN out of loyalty and nostalgia and no other sites. But even I'm noticing how slow and out of touch they are. Does IGN need to change or are they dying too? Before I answer this, Chris, I'm curious like what your impression is, not only of from the outside, like what is your impression of IGN and the GameSpots and everything? I agree. I mean, I have a legacy with IGN. I love IGN, but it does feel like a site that is just chasing things. And this seems to be the case for many major publications. Yeah,
I mean, I used to go to IGN a lot, and I think I really relied on them for like trailers, and they were just like the most popular site that I had seen talking about games. Like that's really it was just sort of a default situation that I ended up even going to that site in the first place. But I can't speak to how they are now because I just don't go to these sites anymore. I typically, I get my gaming information or gaming news typically doing like just paying attention to Twitter now, or like some YouTubers that I follow, like will have like interesting videos about like, okay, here's some news that broke. Obviously Maddie with the Aspire news, like way before everybody else was talking about it. So I don't know if I could speak much to like what their place is now. I didn't even know anything about the Ryan McCaffrey thing.
Yeah, so I'll explain that a little bit. I have a great affinity for Ryan McCaffrey, a personal good friend of mine. So yeah, take it with a grain of salt. But Ryan McCaffrey actually went and did the legwork, went and talked to Victoria and all these other people that are working on 6 Days in Fallujah, put up the interviews, put up all the pieces, put up a podcast and all of that. And then you'll recall, or maybe you won't, but that IGN then ran a story like, kind of an op-ed against it, which is fine. I think that's great to present multiple sides of a story, but then kind of threw him under the bus in the intro, being like, we didn't do a good enough job of framing this and blah, 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 blah. So that's kind of just what ended up happening. And I called that out because I was like, why? Ryan McCaffrey is literally the only person on the editorial staff anyone cares about anymore. I mean, no offense, but there are other people really at IGN people care about. Yeah, no, it's totally insane. I mean, Ryan McCaffrey is the only person there doing any original work at all. And I know that because I read IGN. And so I think I've said this before, but I have a very specific way I go about getting the show ready every week, which is I open up a browser and then I go to PlayStation blog and I start opening up right clicking and opening new tabs. And then I go to IGN, and then I go to Kotaku and Polygon and Push Square, Games Industry, Gamatsu. I go to all those and I just open a bunch of shit. And then I just go through and I see where all the sources are. And when you find out, I mean, because you can see it on our website, on our show, I never cite IGN because they're never the originators. And I straight up wrote more original pieces at IGN my last year there than I think I've seen anyone write in total in the last few years. And I was a little concerned or confused because someone had written like they're getting a new news editor, and they're like, I can't wait to continue to grow IGN's news product. And I'm like, what news product? You guys don't break any news. The last time when someone tried to break news, you threw them under the bus. Dustin, how are you feeling about IGN and kind of just the legacy media? Because I know we're hard on them, but it just doesn't seem like you can survive this way. I don't understand, unless you're scraping for SEO and you're just a farm. That sucks. That's not what IGN was.
Yeah, and before I say anything, obviously, I also owe a great deal of gratitude to IGN. I'm here right now on this podcast because I listened to a PlayStation podcast many years ago from IGN, and they kind of ushered me into this. That site is what got me interested in this industry.
Many people can say the same, but it's not the same site. Go on.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And Colin, I think you hit the nail on the head. Is just that they are that primarily, to me, just a click farm in a lot of ways, in that they are taking the PR blasts, they're taking a lot of other people's news stories and then writing them and sourcing them, which I think the original question was what purpose do they serve?
Right.
And there are still, I brought this up many times this episode, but there's the gaming audience outside of the industry, outside of us and the people that listen to this show, which if you ask them about video game news, the most likely thing they're going to say is IGN, that they go to the IGN app and that provides them with what they're looking for. And so, maybe we can look at that as the main product, or what IGN offers is that they do provide an easy way for your average gamer, consumer, whatever. They can download an IGN app on their phone. They don't need to go to a million places, and they can get all of the main info that they need from this one source. So that's, to me, what the advantage is. But for listeners of this show, the people on the inside will say they're not going to IGN anymore, and they're not listening to IGN's podcast anymore. You can just look at the numbers, really. Not that
I looked at that recently. We're killing Podcast Beyond. I didn't even know that, because I was like, I assume Podcast Beyond is doing great still. I mean, we used to get over 1 million downloads a month when I was on that show.
Wow.
There's no way they're doing that kind of traffic, and you can just see that on YouTube and then kind of extrapolate those numbers. I always thought PS I Love You was our major competitor. They still are, because we're both beating Podcast Beyond, which is the show we both came from. So yeah, I agree. It's very strange. It's very strange. Chris, do you have more to
sites? Say? No, I would just say that these sites are only as good as the people that are writing for them, and when you just the fact that they're throwing their main person under the bus at this point. It's like I always felt like Ryan McCaffrey was too good for IGN, like for a while now. I was just because I remember when he was doing he did a lot of the Xbox stuff back in the day, and not a lot of people were doing Xbox stuff. He was pretty much the only person doing it, really.
Yeah, we hired him to compete with us. Casey. So Casey Lynch used to be the editor in chief. I've been under many editors in chief, but he was the editor in chief when Ryan was hired. And the reason they hired Ryan, they poached him from Xbox Magazine, was because they literally, Greg and Colin made IGN into a PlayStation website. That was literally the internal kind of scuttlebutt. We are looked at as a PlayStation site because our Xbox coverage is so bad. And so that's why they brought Ryan on. Yeah. And he brought it, he brought it to fruition. And
yeah. And he nailed it. And he nails it currently. I think the fact that they threw him under the bus is just unacceptable. And given the fact that he is the only person there that I recognize, it seems to be I don't know why you would do that to somebody who's probably the most recognizable person on your platform. And if these websites are doing things like that, then maybe there's not much of a place for them anymore.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah. I just feel like if I could afford Ryan, I would go poach him myself. I just can't afford, Ryan. So it's because I totally agree with you. Like on the editorial staff where I came from, he is it. Now there are a couple other people like, obviously I love Damon Hatfield and others, but they're podcast hosts. What your editorial team, no one knows anyone on that team except for Ryan. And I was really bummed that they did that to him. And I thought he was very magnanimous, because if they did that shit to me when I was there, I would have immediately went on Podcast Beyond and published it to the site without anyone listening to it and been like, this is fucking bullshit and here's who did it. So I thought he was quite magnanimous in his response, because that would have been me going into an office being like, if you guys do this to me again, I'm quitting. Kind of like I did at E3 in 2014. All right. Joshua Holt wrote in and said, hey, Secret Symbols crew. People have been justifiably upset at the news of a Last of Us remake. Perhaps I'm giving this too much thought, but is there any chance a remake could be a return to the first game's earlier timeline with new characters? Or do you take it to mean that we're beginning a retread of the Joel and Ellie story? I, for one, would be interested in seeing that world from a different point of view. Thanks for the great work and best wishes. I wanted to read this one out. Guys, I don't know if you have anything to say about this one, but I wanted to read this out to say, like, that's not going to happen. So that's a new Last of Us game. That's a new game. Yeah, I would love that game. Joel's 20 years of missing action between the fall of the world and the beginning of The Last of Us is rife with storytelling possibilities. But we don't. Yeah, that's not going to be it.
That would be a prequel game. It wouldn't be The Last of Us remake, And even if they were to do something like that, if they were to tweak the original Last of Us, which is considered by the majority of people to be a masterpiece, and anything that you change in that game would have drastic ramifications as to how people are going to perceive it, given its masterpiece status, that's not a nest you want to poke. They're in a weird position now where they just kind of have to make the same game again. Exactly as it is, or make something completely different while still being the same game, which is not possible.
That's a Hobson's choice, man.
Look, you're going to get a Last of Us remake. It's going to probably be the same game again with like updated controls. Like it's probably going to play a little bit more like The Last of Us 2. Maybe you can go prone. Maybe a more robust craft system. Maybe they'll go a little bit more in depth with some of the characters that you meet. I don't know what the hell they're going to do, but it's not a good position to be in to have to touch up a masterpiece. That's not a fun place to be. No. Because it's very easy to fuck that up, because games are very finicky things. These things don't come together until like the very end a lot of the time. And even if you change one thing, that can affect like the entire thing. I still think about like the Halo Combat Evolved anniversary and how disgusting it looked. It was just the most ugly fucking thing that I've ever seen. And that's you don't want to fuck with that. So you're probably just going to get the same game again with smoother animations. But even then, that would be so lazy that why even bother? Like,
I know
this
it's lame.
whole thing, I get so upset when I talk about this. Dustin, please.
No,
say something.
I was just thinking. Okay, let's say that let's entertain the idea. This is either not quite a remake or it's something before The Last of Us. What do we call it? Do we call it The Fewer of Us?
The First of Us?
The not quite Last of Us? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities.
Many of us.
The many, but not quite last.
Just us.
Just us.
Oh man, I it's a Hobson's choice. I don't know why they're even putting. Chris, you make a great point. Why are you even putting yourself in this position? To be fair, one studio really messed around in the Sony's ecosystem with a game that was very well regarded already, and that's Bluepoint with the last. I'm not the Last Guardian, with Shadow of the Colossus. So maybe you do something like that, but I don't even know why you're putting yourself in this position. And this is a project for Bluepoint. By the way, this is a project for Bluepoint. I think Naughty Dog recaptured it because they have more power than everyone, and I think they're so crazy there that they want to do it internally. I think when people are like, because we talked about it last week, like, they said when they built The Last of Us on PS4 and they ported it the next year, they're like, we needed to do that to learn the PS4. And I'm like, And now it seems like they're probably going to use the same excuse for the PS5. And I'm like, no one else needs to remake their games to learn the console. So clearly you guys are just fucking control freaks. And I think that's kind of the way it went. And I don't blame you, but I think it's a sign that maybe you should just let it go. And Bluepoint did a really nice job with Uncharted. So why wouldn't you let them crack at Last of Us and unencumber yourself, Neil?
Yeah.
You son of a bitch.
Bluepoint seems to be the studio that most consistently just nails these remakes. I mean, Demon Souls is great looking. It's gorgeous. It's like the most I still think it's the most gorgeous game that is out currently. Like even however many months into the PS5's life cycle, that might change with Returnal. I don't know, but that's a studio that is built for something like this. This is a studio that people trust with a Metal Gear Solid 1 remake. Like that's not just standard trust. They could handle a Last of Us remake if anyone wanted that.
Yeah, no one wants that. I always, you see anything on Twitter, like you go into a Twitter account, a Twitter thing, and it's like everyone agrees except for one person. Well, you're going to find that one person on The Last of Us remake too, but the game came out in 2013. It didn't even come out 8 years ago. Just leave it alone. Leave it alone. And God forbid, just make it, well, it already is accessible on PS5. I was going to say it's on PS4 already. So,
yeah,
you know what? I'm going to slow down.
George is getting upset.
George is getting upset. Benjamin Eamons Whitehall wrote in and said, "Hey, Goopy Gators, what's the deal with Sony slowly releasing previous gen exclusives on the PC? What's their strategy? I feel like they're trying to entice customers over onto their PlayStation ecosystem by way of going, hey, look at how cool these games are, right? Come to our console to play even more and get future installments. To be clear, this is fantastic, but I feel like the games they put on the PC as of now are the weakest ones. Horizon Zero Dawn was a great release on the PC and made sense considering Death Stranding's port, but they've only followed up with Days Gone so far, which feels like the weakest of their releases. What about Ghost of Tsushima, God of War, Uncharted, or The Last of Us? These are the signature AAA games from the PS4's generation, and considering Sony's new focus on blockbusters, it would only make sense for them to show these off to PC players, in turn dangling the carrot on the stick in front of their faces to drive even more sales on the PS5. The lack of communication on this feels like a big mistake."
Wow.
Chris, I was going to say, why don't they release those games on PC, Chris?
Yeah, well, okay, let me just cure you of a delusion here. I don't think Uncharted or The Last of Us are ever coming to PC. I think those games specifically, those are just, that's PlayStation. Like that, I think those are staying. Maybe Uncharted, but again, it's like the fact that all those older games are like locked on. Maybe 1, 2, and 3 or something one day, but I agree with you. I don't think The Last of Us. That's never gonna. I don't think The Last of Us is ever coming to PC. I agree with you. Ghost of Tsushima is very, very new, so that's a while away. If that's coming to PC, you could still milk it, but I think they're going to let some time pass. They're going to let some time pass before. I think Horizon makes sense because of the time. I think Death Stranding makes sense because it wasn't a proper first party. I think Days Gone makes sense kind of specifically because it wasn't this, grandiose, like huge title. It's like, okay, we've got something that's good, but not like it's not going to affect us dramatically if we put this over on PC, So why not put it over on PC? It's a good game. People are going to be interested in it. God of War, I think you will see. I think God of War is something that will be on PC. I think specifically it will probably release. My hunch is that they would put it out to promote God of War 2. That might be wrong because I have no idea when this second game is coming out at this point. It feels like a fall 2022 game at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I totally agree.
Yeah. But, I just think Uncharted and The Last of Us, I think Naughty Dog is just premium PlayStation, and I don't think that they would put that anywhere else. I think they're more flexible with other studios and other IP, more so than they are with Naughty Dog. I think they got to protect that.
Dustin, I was going to say before I throw it over to you, I think another reason Days Gone might have been enticing is because it runs on Unreal, so they don't really have to do much.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
is that the two games they've put out? I mean, not only do they make sense in the fact Horizon 2 is coming, but they are also the easiest games for them to put out because Decima, all of the work to get it running on PC was already done at that point with Death Stranding. And as you said, Days Gone's running on Unreal, so that was very easy, I'm sure.
Yeah, that was probably very modular for them. I think Chris is right too, though, Dustin. Like, you got to see. I actually don't think it's a bad idea for them to release PlayStation games on PC. I'm in the minority on that, though. I think this is something Sony needs to manage because people were really upset when Horizon came over. Now, I don't know if that matters or not, but Horizon doesn't mean anything to Sony or to PlayStation fans compared to like what Drake or The Last of Us mean? I mean, people are going to lose their... If The Last of Us goes to PC, people are going to fucking melt down.
Good.
And I don't think it's even worth it to like even risk it. You know?
Dude, it's such a stupid argument. Like, you want as many people to love the same franchises that you love, so that when the new property comes out, you send a message when everyone buys it that you want more of it. Like,
right.
It doesn't matter if it's on PC or PS4. Like, I don't know. Like when you get into the territory of people being mad about exclusives, old exclusives coming to PC, you're getting into territory where you're not thinking logically anymore.
Yeah.
It makes no sense, and you're just being a fanboy. Thank you.
I do wonder. I think Chris is right where. I mean, I totally agree with you, Dustin. I mean, people call me a fanboy all the time, and I was one of the biggest advocates of them releasing as many games as possible on PC because I think it's important to the ecosystem. You wring the water out of the towel. It's over. You know, like there's nothing else to be done. I mean, this is what John Carvin was saying. It actually would have behooved Ben to get the game out on PC sooner if they want. You know, so it's weird how that interplay works.
Yeah. I would also say, like, the games that have been on PC, and it's the reason why I don't think Uncharted or The Last of Us are going to go to PC, beyond the engine reasons and beyond, like, just Naughty Dog's importance to Sony. I think you got Days Gone, you got Death Stranding, you got Horizon, you have, I think Ghost is probably also coming at some point, eventually, far later down the line. These are new IP. You know, these are the jumping in points for these franchises. It's not like Uncharted where there's 3 previous games that people can't even get running on PC reliably, or like, you know, The Last of Us, which they're clearly not going to put on PC because they're remaking the fucking first game again, which they would have no reason to do if they were just going to, you know, put the first game on PC. And you have God of War, which is the 4th game. Yeah, it's a soft reboot, but you're jumping into the middle of this thing, you know? Like, I think they're kind of operating on, like, what experiences can we drive people, that we can draw people in with, that they can feel like they're being welcomed into something new without feeling like they've been missing out on something. Because I think there's a danger to that, you know? That's why or at least that's what I feel part of the decision-making was with 343 and over on the Xbox side, when they were putting out the Halo collection on PC, they started with Halo Reach, which was chronologically the first one, but the last one developed. It's a way to get these people to these universes without making them feel like they're missing out on shit. And right now, Uncharted 1, 2, 3 are just not playable on even modern PlayStation hardware. So, like, I don't know.
Yeah,
well, they have the what is it, the
Blue
collection,
Point games.
I guess.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying, because I feel like
I think that plays into the strategy a little bit, not entirely.
Yeah.
I don't think that's even like close to the majority of the reason why, but I think it plays into it.
Well, I think the thing with God of War is interesting too, because I feel like Sony has like multiple beats that they can hit. And I think this might be why they're not talking about God of War, the first one on PS5 right now, is because they actually have this built-in like interstitial where they're like, all right, to tease God of War Ragnarok, we're going to bring God of War to PS5. Then once you check that box, then you check the PC box. So I feel like they can do this multiple times, right? It's like port Ghost of Tsushima to PS5, then port it to PC. You know?
I would say I don't think they're going to port I don't think they're going to port God of War or Ghost of Tsushima to PS5, because I think the PS4 versions on PS5 already run about as well as a PS5 port would. Like, there's not really much improvement that you could do there that isn't already done. I think we already have these ports, which is why I think the PC port is the next thing that's going to happen. I'm just curious as to, like, how long ago did Horizon come to PC? How long ago was that? Was that
that was not even, that was a few months ago. That was not even.
So that was a few months ago. We still don't know when Horizon is coming out, but when we get Horizon's release date, we can kind of make an assumption, right? Because we can see, like, how long before launch of Horizon 2 did Horizon 1 come to PC? And then we can kind of make a judgment call as to, like, you know, if God of War does come to PC, then we have a pretty good idea of when God of War 2 might be planned for. But until we have that information for both Horizon and the God of War PC port, we're kind of in the dark and we're kind of stumbling. So I don't really know what to say as far as that goes, but don't expect Uncharted and Last of Us on PC. Just don't.
I agree with you. I mean, I especially at The Last of Us, I just think that that's like the crown jewel. Uncharted used to be, but I agree with you. Naughty Dog's games almost seem untouchable. That seems like the way you would court people. Just to answer your question, it was longer ago than I thought. August 7th. I thought it was earlier this year for some reason. Why am I getting that confused with? Am I getting that confused with something else? What else came out? No.
August 7th?
I guess
really? It was that long ago?
Yeah. Oh, no, Days Gone. I'm a fucking idiot. That's what I'm getting confused with. Days Gone just came to PC. Okay, so that's why I was confused.
So that's a long time, actually. It's actually, that makes it even more concerning that we haven't heard anything about about God of War 2 or a PC port to God of War.
Well, I do think we always talk about Sony making the right decisions. I just want to encourage people to let Sony make decisions too, just in the sense that they need data. We don't want them to make assumptions, right, about the way things would go. So they're getting data. I don't know that the data is very good, by the way. I don't know that they're that encouraged by the data, but they're gathering it. You know, they're seeing how games are selling. They're seeing how their games are running. And I don't think Horizon set the sales world on fire at all on PC. And that might be all they needed to know. And now they're going to see what Days Gone, and they're going to continue to chronicle it. So we'll see. I just think as hard as we are on Sony often, we have to give them room to at least discover what they need to do. And you can't do that because we just said that they made an assumption based on PS3 and Vita stores clearly just by looking at data. But they didn't gather it from the right sources. They needed to go to the people first. And I think that this is maybe the way they do that. So we'll see.
Sure.
But it was a good question. Oh, I did want to... Oh, wait. Is this in this one? No, I guess I'll move on. Never mind. Bobby Knuckles wrote in and said, "What's up, boys? I dove headfirst in the trophy hunting during the pandemic, and it's got me paying much more attention to collectibles. Ghost of Tsushima probably has my favorite collectibles, while Odin's ghost pigeons in God of War, those are the worst, have overstayed their welcome. What do you enjoy about collectibles, and what drives you up the wall? What games would you recommend for a new trophy hunter that have exceptional collectibles?" So I wanted to bring this story up, or this question up, guys, because I need to make the ultimate recommendation for collectibles. It's BioShock. I still feel like I am a huge advocate of the audio diary. And I was thinking about this. When I was putting this together, I was thinking about this. And I'm like, why? Why do I like the audio diary? And it's so easy to describe. It is the only exposition-laden collectible that does not interrupt gameplay. Yep. So you're able to explore and play without having, like, I'm in Outriders. There's a shit ton of collectibles. It's really fascinating. It's very well written. It's very interesting. But I literally sit there for 45 minutes reading this shit. Because it's like, I'll wait until like 20 things stack up and then I'm just reading and like, I love audio diaries and I feel like people are really hard on them. I feel like the audio diaries in BioShock and BioShock Infinite are amongst the most excellently executed, important, vital collectibles in a game, to the point where my brother and I did a knockback episode on the original BioShock, which he had never played. And I told him, I'm like, what did you think about the audio diaries? He's like, oh, I didn't even really bother with those. And I'm like, you missed the whole story. Yeah. What is the game even about? So how do you guys feel about what your favorite collectibles are and their value to you as a gamer?
I would agree. I would agree. Like, of the collectibles that I've seen, I think BioShock does like the audio diaries just so perfectly. And, I was about to say before you said it that, like, it's a way for you to, it's a cutscene that doesn't interrupt you. Like, it's like the perfect it's the perfect way to tell stories in a game like that without really interrupting the flow of like combat or the flow of exploration. And I really appreciate them, and I think they're done perfectly in BioShock. BioShock Infinite, they're done a little bit less well because I find that they're like so close to each other in a lot of places in BioShock Infinite that like you often like find one and start playing it, and then you find another one and it's like, oh, you kind of gotta wait to pick it up, or sometimes they'll like, there's a lot of dialogue that happens during the mission that'll kind of like overflow.
Right. That's always, that's a design choice that always bothers me. You should know. Yeah.
Exactly. The game should know when things are happening. But yeah, no, I would agree with you. I think BioShock does it perfectly. But aside from BioShock, the only other collectibles that I can appreciate, like I don't like the Uncharted collectibles or like any of these things where it's like, oh, look, a little urn, oh, look, a medallion, and you just spin it around and it's like a nice model and everything. But like I don't really care about that shit. If you can give me a collectible that affects like my gameplay, That's cool.
Skulls?
Like skulls, like difficulty modifiers and stuff like that. I love that shit. That's not PlayStation centric, but like I love. But it's also like something that's very bizarrely absent from a lot of games. Like, make your collectibles mean something more than just in-universe stuff. Like, if I like, why not have it in Uncharted that, like, if I collect an urn, I get like a new difficulty setting or a difficulty modifier or something.
Or why not have Drake reflect on what he found or something? You know, like he discovers a vase or something, and so like he puts it away, and then like while he walks away, he's reflecting on like, oh, this reminds me of a thing I did, when I was a
Some games
I just think that kind of stuff is cool.
Yes, I like some games do that pretty well.
Yeah, I was looking through my notes by the way because I knew my BioShock Infinite notes were in here, and I wrote down a bunch of shit from that, and I remember my favorite quote from the audio diaries in that was better a handyman than a dead one. I love that line because the handyman, of course, are enemies in that game. Dustin, what do you think about collectibles?
So
in your video games,
I think I have to agree with everything that both of you guys are saying, especially with BioShock. So what I will add to this conversation, a pet peeve, something I've never forgotten, is I was trying to get all of the achievements in Fallout 3 on Xbox 360.
Oh, the morality stuff? Is that what you were talking about? The bobbleheads. One of them's missing, right? And you can miss it. One
of them is missable. And that is unforgivable in an open world game. I understand in a linear game that makes a little more sense to me that why some of them would be missable. You cannot have missable collectibles in an open world game, or else you're going to piss me off big time.
I forgot about that. Yeah, because one of the bobbleheads is in a vault that you can't get to again. Yeah. I forgot about that because I beat Fallout 3 a second time to get that platinum too. So, yeah.
Unacceptable. So don't do that.
That was my second platinum trophy ever. I'm now on 118.
Whoa.
So come quite a long way. My first one was Infamous, in case anyone's curious. All right, let's see here. What else we have? Oh, Full Metal McCoy wrote into us. It's getting fucking bright in here. Holy shit. Look at it looks like I'm getting in. There we go. It's a little better, right? Hey, CDC, hope you men are well. This inquiry is primarily for Colin, but obviously love everyone's input. I was hoping you could expound on your desire for Sony to make another handheld console to counteract the Nintendo Switch. As the market currently stands, I don't see what Sony has to gain and feel they aren't ceding any ground to Nintendo. While a lot of people use their Switch strictly as a handheld, Nintendo views it as a home console and is their primary focus for software output. Unless the handheld is some sort of device which allows you to take the PS5 games on the go, I feel a separate handheld with its own games and system requirements would just split Sony's focus for the worst. Appreciate you guys and keep fucking that chicken. I must say, I don't disagree with what he's saying here. This is a very selfish desire for me.
Yeah.
This is a very selfish desire. I don't think Sony has much to gain here either. But Chris, is it not true that Nintendo is controlling this ground uncontested? That's the weirdest thing to me is like, why wouldn't someone want to do something about this? Like, not because you don't want Nintendo to succeed, but they proved that handhelds still are viable. Like, I just feel like this is maybe a mistake to just ignore it, especially when you're doing things like VR, which is splitting the focus,
Yeah, it's a lot to kind of think about. I think we're just in an era right now where we have so much portable technology that's strong, that is kind of ubiquitous already. Like, we have smartphones, we have tablets, we have these, very lightweight laptops, and especially in the realm where streaming exists and is becoming a little bit more viable than it has been in years prior. You're not going to see another PlayStation handheld. You're just not going to.
I agree.
Because there's no reason. Because there's so much horsepower that exists already in everybody's pocket that they could, if they wanted to do something like that, they would probably go the Xbox route. They would probably go the xCloud route and be like, hey, you know what? Hook up a controller to your phone and you can play something. You could play The Last of Us Part 2 on your phone, probably. Just like with like streaming and shit. Like, there's just no reason. I would like to see one too. I've always wanted an Xbox handheld, but I never got it.
I wonder if they ever investigated that internally. Has anyone ever talked about that there? Like, publicly?
I don't think, as far as I know, no one's ever talked about it. They've talked about, like, people have experimented with their IP on like DS and stuff, and they've come to pitch them stuff.
Halo is going to be on DS.
Yeah, the Halo DS thing. That
is real. That is real.
It is real.
Yep. A lot of people don't think it's real, but it is.
It is. But like they never went into that space, which is weird, which to me is astounding because like they're the richest and, you know, most like of all the companies to do it, they would have the least to lose.
Right.
In
I
doing
agree.
it.
And they have great success right now with Surface in getting into hardware, which is unusual for them. So
yeah, that's right. So like, I don't know. I it's not so much that I think it's the handheld space is uncontested right now. That is true. But I think something to take into account is the fact that while the Switch is a handheld, I think the bigger niche that it fills is this hybrid model, which is a lot more like if the Switch was just a handheld, I wouldn't have bought it. Like I just wouldn't have. Like that's just not I don't care. Like I didn't buy the DS, I didn't buy the 3D. Well, I got the DS. I didn't get the 3DS, I didn't get the Vita until recently. I'm just not super into handhelds. I want like a powerful machine that can play the coolest shit on a big screen. That's what I want. And the fact that Nintendo has come up with a solution that gives you both of those things is very, very, that's not easy. And if Sony wants to compete in that ground, they're going to have to make essentially a PS5 that you can gimp at will to take with you. That's the only way you're going to compete in this space. Because if you come up with a PS Vita 2 or whatever the hell, a new PlayStation handheld.
Let's call it PSP3.
PSP3. If you do that, then you're in this weird situation where now you've got to commit to manufacturing this hardware, and now you've got you got to sell this thing to people who already have so many devices to keep track of. It's kind of a losing battle. You got to go where people are, and people are on their phones. And I think Microsoft knows that with xCloud. And I think if Sony's ever going to go into this place again, that's likely the place they're going to do. And it's where they have been doing it, by the way. You can stream PlayStation games to your phone.
Right.
I've done it.
I think you're totally right. I mean, I think you make totally viable points. I'm wondering, Dustin, if you agree or disagree with Chris.
I think Chris is right on the money. Nintendo has something special going on that just simply would not work for PlayStation. And I can see them being very gun shy, especially after Vita, for many reasons. I think the only way a PlayStation portable, a new portable device could exist is that if it'd have to be like known that's like, hey, this is for certain types. Like imagine if certain games, like more smaller games, would work on a proposed streaming PlayStation device. And it was known that it's like, hey, this isn't a AAA machine, right? Which is kind of what the Vita became. How do you take the best parts of Vita and make a new device? But again, it's like, why open up another pillar of your business?
It's also worth noting, I don't know how important this is necessarily, but PlayStation's biggest marquee IPs, like their biggest games and their biggest franchises, are just on the home consoles. Like they just are. Like that's where they started. That's where they originated. And Nintendo is in a unique position where, you know, Pokemon is like one of the biggest things in the world, and that originated on a handheld. You know, like they have a long legacy of handheld being like just kind of ingrained into their business model, and they have a lot of, you know, support for those machines in ways that Sony probably doesn't have. You know, there's not a what's a very important PSP IP, you know?
Holy shit, got right. It's there are no, I mean, some of them continued, but they like Siphon Filter and stuff. And yeah, like you said, none of them have their origins there. And I agree with you in the sense that the one danger here is that Nintendo is not staying put. So they're preparing a new machine, and everyone knows that. So it seems like it's going to have 4K docked output and stuff like that. So you're dealing with a machine that is like, I agree with you, Chris. Like I said, it is a selfish want. I just think the only thing is, and clearly Sony believes in VR in a way that they don't believe in handheld gaming, because the whole split mentality doesn't bother them there. So, but it is an interesting question, Full Metal McCoy. I want to see, it's easy for me to take other companies and move them around a chessboard. So, you know, what the hell do I have no rooster in this fight if you want to make it a cockfight, you son of a bitch. That's me. Sam wrote in with the final question. He's only known as Sam. He says, hey, Last Standers, if the new Ratchet game is a critical and commercial hit, has Insomniac replaced Naughty Dog as Sony's most important first-party studio? Naughty Dog was a juggernaut in the PS3 era with new IP, Uncharted and The Last of Us, putting out 4 games of excellent quality during its life. However, in the PS4 era, they made only 2 games, both sequels, with Uncharted 4 having a tumultuous dev cycle and The Last of Us 2 being very divisive amongst fans. In the same time, Insomniac remade Ratchet & Clank while releasing Spider-Man and Miles Morales with Rift Apart on its heels. Of course, Naughty Dog is a great studio with the news of The Last of Us remake in development and Insomniac firing on all cylinders, but are they still the cream of the crop? Thanks for all the great show every week. I love this question, although I think, Chris, the way we have to split it up is Insomniac, and I think I said this on a recent episode, so I don't mean to be redundant, but Insomniac's role in getting PlayStation 5 off the ground is massive. Yeah. It's unclear if they will even be ready to go after Ratchet & Clank for some time. So it's hard to say that they are the most important, but in terms of solidifying PlayStation 5's foothold at this time, their games are the only ones coming out. So I almost feel bad for them in the sense that they're going to kind of have to go away now. You know, like Ratchet's going to come out and then they're going to have to go. And it kind of sucks because they're a big team and they just had their 2 games come out within 7 months of each other. How do you feel about Naughty Dog and Insomniac? I think it's clear that they are the 2 most important studios.
Yeah, without a doubt. I know Insomniac definitely defined the tone for the PS5. Like they defined the style going forward, because that's usually how things go. Like the launch of a console, within the first year or 2, the games that come out there usually define that console for a while. Like I know with the 360, it was like Gears and Halo in the first couple of years that really defined it. I know, PS4 earlier on with Bloodborne and people still talk about Bloodborne, and it's still not at 60 frames.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable. And that was, like we said, that was the 5-year, or no, the 6-year. It's been now 6 years now. Yeah. Can't believe how old that game is. It's crazy. Yeah.
But yeah, I whether or not one's more important, I'll say this. I think Insomniac is more important, but I don't necessarily think that they're the cream of the crop, if that makes sense. I think they're instrumental in the support of PS5. I think they're instrumental. They're an instrumental studio, and they just put out great shit after great game. But I think people are always, until Naughty Dog really messes up, and I don't think they have yet. Until they until they really drop the ball, I think Naughty Dog is always going to be looked at as that's the top of the pyramid, which that might be a little annoying if you're working in Sony's first party. Like that might be annoying if you're at Naughty Dog and if you're at Sony Bend.
Yeah, ask Bend. I mean, they were basically tethered on like a cancer at Naughty Dog.
So I think a more interesting question of this is while Naughty Dog is still very, very important, is it good that they're so important? That is something that I think is kind of up in the air.
That's a deep thought.
I personally don't think it's great that you have this one studio that's kind of like the backbone, and I think you're seeing that with the fact that they're remaking the first Last of Us.
I also think you're seeing. God, it's getting so. I'm like in this freaking awkward zone here with the sun. I got to get curtains in here. I feel like people want to take Naughty Dog down too. I said this a lot during the lead up to The Last of Us, and even after the game came out, I was like, it seems pretty obvious, Dustin, that people are swinging for Naughty Dog. Not people in the industry necessarily, but just fans wanted to not like The Last of Us. I'm just telling you, they didn't want to like it, and I really am annoyed by that because I think it's so fucking good. But regardless, where do you stand, Dustin, on this Naughty Dog versus Insomniac kind of deal?
I feel like they just offer very different types of games for potentially, I mean, obviously we're fans of all of them, but for different types of people, right? You're not going to have a multi-part review discussion on the new Ratchet and Clank game. It's not that type of game. Well, I mean, who knows? Right. Maybe we will be questioning our moral...
the morality.
It's going to be all about Black Lives Matter, and we're going to have a 3-episode...
Who knows? But...
Hey, Black Lives Matter was in Miles Morales, so I wouldn't be surprised.
That's true. Yeah.
No, yeah. That's right.
So, like I said, what I was trying to say basically is just that, they offer very different things, and it'll be cool to see Insomniac. Obviously, a lot of history behind that studio. They've done a lot of great things, but now with that really direct connection to Sony, maybe they do have a way that they can make a game of the year type of game. Because I think that even if Ratchet is the most fun game of the year, people, when they're looking for game of the year, are looking for something on a story level that is much higher, I think, oftentimes.
And I thought The Last of Us Part 2 was on that another level, personally. We disagree on that. Chris and I do anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Because I was like in tears at the end of that game.
Yeah. So yeah, different aspects, I think.
I agree.
I would say Insomniac has proven their importance just at the sheer speed that they're able to deliver such varyingly different high quality. To be able to shift from Ratchet to like Spider-Man, you know? And I know that these are different teams, but just like that, all that talent coming out of the same studio, with such a high quality, and they're both such completely different games. I think that is what kind of makes them very, 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 very important in a way that Naughty Dog isn't, because Naughty Dog's really, really good at changing, you know, at evolving. But I don't know if you could take current Naughty Dog and say, make something like Ratchet today. You know, I don't think they could do it because they're not built to do that. But Insomniac is built in such a way that I really believe that Insomniac could handle literally anything that you throw at them. Like, if they really put the money down and put the time in, they could make the best shit in any genre, I think. In a way that Naughty Dog, I think, is a little bit more structured to what they're currently building.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And I think what's interesting about Insomniac too is, you know, they've played a pretty important role in Sony's launches for a while. I mean, Ratchet & Clank was an early PS2 game. Resistance Fall of Man was a PS3 launch game, and they got PS5 out the door with Miles Morales. So they're hanging around, and I think we can only hope, Chris, that, you know, they might have a third team in motion right now with Resistance, or maybe even a VR game. I think Sony bought them for a reason, apart from securing them, but because they're operating in such a way that I think they can continue to hit. And I think they'll be really important because they're the only, Polyphony has two teams and Guerrilla, but Insomniac seems to actually be the biggest team. And I think the only team with two truly different locations, like apart from each other, as opposed to like Polyphony has kind of two of the same studios in Japan or whatever. So anyway, we'll keep an eye on this and chronicle this. I think the unfortunate reality is we're not going to see Naughty Dog for a really long time, or Insomniac after Ratchet. So, yeah. But thank you all for your love, kindness, and support of our show. This is a pretty long one, more than 3 hours. Sorry, Dustin.
Oh, shit.
So,
it's Ben.
Yeah, any closing comments?
Apologize.
Dustin, let's go to you first.
Sure.
Closing comments.
Closing comments. The Vita lives once again. I was trying to figure out the weeks. Is this the third week he rose again? Maybe since its death?
It's a little bit of a Trinitarian thing going on here, huh?
So remember, keep your Vita family very close, and be well. That's right. Oh wait, I got the same box here. Sorry, audio listeners, but we're just like, oh, Vita, all this stuff.
Chris, closing comments.
Man. I'm just starving. I just realized.
God, you have the same answer every time.
I just realized I'm a human being.
I know. You have to eat on a schedule.
Yeah. I'm trying to like just actually schedule my time and like actually be a fucking adult.
Me too. That's why we're recording earlier than we usually do. But I didn't know when we were scheduling this that you were in California. Or I probably wouldn't have done this.
No, it's great. No, I was super happy because like I've been trying to. I woke up at like 7 anyway today.
Oh, okay, cool. I did too, but it's because I forgot to take my meds, as I said. So. I'm gonna go lose my mind now and wait until tonight when I can start taking them again.
All right,
boys. Thank you for your time. Thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support. We'll see you next time for more Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. Until then, goodbye.
See you next time.
Take care, guys.
Ooh, Dustin he didn't know what to do there. Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from Central Virginia and Burbank, California, USA. The show was conceived by, is written by, and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Chris Raygun Maldonado. Sacred Symbol's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level or higher on Patreon, and we're grateful for your kindness and generosity.